I wanted to tell my mom that I was streaming because she's like, I want to watch all the interviews. So I think she really loves World of Warcraft. And I know that's not the game that you worked on, but like she enjoys it a lot. And I did tell her that you brought me to the WoW Quest team to pitch Blood Elf Druids one time. And I wasn't prepared. And so I just went in and they were like, okay, what's your case? And I was like, it would be fun. We all deserve a chance. But,
yeah, well, I mean, I actually did work on World of Warcraft for a short period of time. That was back in like 2005, 2006.
Wow.
It was like the end of Vanilla and Burning Crusade.
Cool. So you were there when, was that when there was the giant chicken? Was there a giant chicken boss? Or that was in the very beginning one?
It might have been. That doesn't sound familiar.
Or maybe I'm just making things up. I don't know. Yeah. No, but there was a period of time and like, so World of Warcraft came out in 2004. Mm-hmm. And then there was a point I was working at Blizzard North at the time. And then Blizzard North closed. Mm-hmm. And everyone at Blizzard North got moved to Blizzard offices in Irvine. And there was kind of like this transitionary period before development on Diablo 3 began. And so I needed to stay productive and busy. And so they said, hey, Wyatt, why don't you come and make some raid encounters for World of Warcraft? So I worked on Encourage, which was the raid instance at the time, and Naxxramas, and then at some of the early bosses in Burning Crusade. Oh, how cool. I must have known that, but I forgot. That's really, really cool.
Well, it's like 15 years ago.
So why don't you introduce yourself and, tell chat a little bit about you, and chat, give a warm welcome to Wyatt Cheng. Can we get some, let's see, what should we do? Let's get Poochie and Sue hugs. That's like a good way to welcome people. So
this is a custom emojis?
Yeah, because like usually people on Twitch have hug emotes, and ours look like that if you can see them popping up. It's a little girl hugging a dog.
Okay. Oh, awesome. Thank you, everyone. Oh, I see lots of hellos. Hi, Skywalker Ranch and Lunar Penguin. Oh, I recognize Lunar Penguin from earlier, from one of the game jams that we were doing. I think Lunar Penguin came by. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I recognize that name. Oh, lots of love. So hello, everyone. My name is Wyatt Cheng. And I've been at Blizzard for almost 19 years now. And I think I met Laura back at Blizzard up in San Mateo at the time, and we've been friends ever since. It was nice when you're able to come by and visit the office.
I went crazy
in Irvine.
It was so cool. All the times were so cool.
Yeah. And I know that you were like really into World of Warcraft and like you said, the Blood Elves.
Yeah, World of Warcraft and StarCraft. I played so much. Yeah. I think, I've been playing Blizzard games. I mean, before I worked at Blizzard, I remember I grew up on Lost Vikings, which was super fun. And when I was in college, I played a bunch of Warcraft 1 on the school's LAN. Oh, dang.
Which I don't know if games were technically allowed, but we just made it work.
That's cool. I miss LAN parties. Like I remember having StarCraft LAN parties where we would play like in the dorms and stuff like that. And you know how you wait in the lobby with your name? So my name was always Tanky Panky Shigi because I would play Terran and I'd do the tank creep. And
okay.
And so at some point, like we played all night and I didn't realize that the night was over because we had those blackout curtains. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's light outside. I changed my name to It's Light Outside. And then I could hear down the hall, like, who's It's Light Outside? Oh no, I got to get to class,
That's the way that they knew what time it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember doing LAN parties too. I mean, I actually still kind of try to do LAN parties once in a while. I mean, it's so fun to like play a game socially with your friends. I think it was the Mists of Pandaria expansion. I just said, hey, you know what?
This was fun. And I said, hey, I'm just going to host a LAN party. So I invited like a bunch of friends to come over, and like 8 people packed up their computers, came over to my place. And this it's weird because you don't even have to do that anymore, right? Mm-hmm. Like nowadays you can play over the internet. And, you know, back in the StarCraft days, like you set up the LAN party because that was the best way to get a really good low latency game going. Yeah. But the internet's so good these days that we don't really have to. But I miss the social aspect of just like hanging out.
And the food, because you can order good food. It's an excuse.
Yeah. Actually, my wife and I were talking about whether we should have some friends come over when Diablo Immortal comes out. I mean, that's the game that I'm working on now. And I'm not here to plug the game. But this is actually what my wife and I were just like yesterday saying, hey, since it's a mobile game, we can still invite people over. We don't have to lug like big monitors and computers around. And we can just like sit out on the couch and everyone can just play. Right now, our biggest consideration is COVID. But, you know, do we want to have a whole bunch of people come over and hang out for 4 to 6 hours and play? But I miss those times. Just hanging out, playing games.
That's so fun. Yeah. There's something really special about that, I think. And also if someone like does something that, you know, you can just yell back, like if it's a competitive game or something, you can like trash talk right in the room. And I'm just kidding. I don't trash talk.
It's hard for me to imagine you trash talking.
So I wanted to ask, you know, like how did you get into making games? Because you've been making games for a long time, and it definitely seems like a passion of yours. So, and also, hi Insomniac, thank you for the raid.
Let's see. I started making games when I was actually really young. When I was 5 years old, actually, my dad bought an IBM PC, like the really old 8086, like just I don't know if anyone I don't know how old people are, how far people go back. Like I guess I'm an old fart. But this is like way back in 1980, and it didn't even have a graphics card. It all had was text, and back then people just played text adventure games. And I would go to the library and borrow these books on like how to program games from the library. And that's where I learned how to do it. And so I did it, basically as long as I can remember. I think I just like took to it immediately. And I just programmed games all through elementary school, middle school, high school, college. You know, it's funny, when I was getting ready to go to college, you know, it's like, you know, senior in high school. I'm from Canada, so we don't use the terms sophomore, freshman, senior, stuff like that. We just say grade 12. So when I was in grade 12, you know, I had to decide what to major in college, and my parents kind of said, you know, you can't do video games for a living. That's not a real job. But I've been doing, you know, making video games and
very on brand with AAPI month.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't make games.
They said, you know, and so what we agreed on is that I would study electrical engineering. And my dad's rationale was, well, if you do electrical engineering, you know, you can go on and become a programmer. If you really want to do games after that, you know, you could. You know, my mom really wanted me to be a doctor. Surprise, surprise. And you know, some people go from electrical engineering to medical school. She wanted to keep that door open. But in my very first internship, I was just working on like circuit boards at Northern Telecom, I think it was. Yeah, Northern Telecom in Ontario, Canada. But I spent all my time playing Magic the Gathering at night. Like I would go to work and we'd work on these circuit boards, and then I'd like clock out and run to the local Magic store and just like play Magic all night. And then if I was at the computer, I was still making games. And I realized that I didn't enjoy doing like non-gaming stuff on the computer for a living. And so later on, I was able to get an internship at Electronic Arts Canada. Worked on FIFA Soccer, And then, but you know, when I graduated, sorry, this is turning into a long story. I hope.
Oh, no,
I hope
no, that's
okay.
totally fine.
Okay. You can stop me at any time. But I don't want to bore people. But again, when I graduated from college, once again, my parents said, "Oh, you know, I don't know about this video game thing. I don't know if that's a good career. You know, I don't know if that's something that you want to spend your life doing." My dad would say to me, "Hey, you know, video games is a young person's thing. What are you going to do when you're 40? Like, do you know any like 40-year-old video game developers?" And, you know, 20 years ago, there weren't that many, but making video games is kind of a young industry to begin with. And I'm not speaking, I don't mean to speak badly of my parents. They wanted the best for me,
Oh,
right?
of course.
You know, They wanted the best for me. They're concerned about my future. They said, "Hey, we're really concerned that you go down a path that doesn't have a long future to it." So I took a job making websites to sell commerce products, and I didn't like it. And so after doing that for 9 months, I had an opportunity to quit, and I was like, nope, I'm going back to making video games again. And I applied for a bunch of different companies and re-entered the video game industry, and I've been making games ever since.
That's so awesome. That's really cool. Actually, one of our mods, I think, worked at EA in Canada. So I'm going to have to ask him if and I think he's around the same age as you. I'm going to have to ask if he knows you.
Yeah, well, so I worked there from 1996 to 1999. Now, just to emphasize, I was an intern at the time. So, and I guess technically EA Canada it's people say Vancouver, but it's actually Burnaby, which is like a suburb of Vancouver. And there's a bunch of cool game industry going on up there.
Oh my gosh, Craig. Okay, so if you see in chat, Base Metal Craig said, yes, must have been there at the same time I started in 1998. Whoa, that's crazy.
Wow.
Small world.
Wow, that is crazy. Wait, okay, so I don't stream regularly, so I'm going to have to try and catch up on chat. But yes, must have been there at the same time. Oh, 1998. Wow, that's cool. Yeah. So okay. Yeah.
Triple Play 2000.
Yeah. So EA Canada was neat because they had a whole bunch of different sports titles. That's where they make the basketball game. They had NHL hockey. We had FIFA soccer. The FIFA group, I think it was called like Extended Play. Was basically you had like different business groups within the organization. Chaos Studios was one of them. Extended Play was another, and so forth. So yeah. That's how that was really cool to be able to see that like you could make a living making video games,
right?
Which today still I think I still talk to, you know, college kids who are like, oh wow, like this could actually be a thing. And it's like, yeah, it could actually be a thing. Like people make games. That's where they come from. So yeah.
Did anybody, when you were working at EA, did anyone ever ask you if you worked at EA Sports specifically? Because like when I worked at EA, much later, like anytime I'd go somewhere, if I had my tag on, it would be so funny because like totally non-nerdy people would come up to me, like really tough guys, and they'd be like, "Oh, you work at EA Sports," you know, and I'm like, well, no, but I work at I'll play, but then, oh man, I love, you know, Madden, or I love this, you know, basketball game or something like that. And I'd always be like, I work at EA.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think back in 2000, the EA Sports is, what was it? EA Sports, it's in the game. Like it was like this like slogan that was really popular, and EA was best known for their sports games. That was like, and I don't think I had to tell people that. I think most people like knew more about the sports side of what EA does. I mean, nowadays they do, you know, they've always done a lot, and they have like the Sims, and especially when they got Maxis, and they have, what's the other stuff, Battlefield and all that. So there's definitely tons of stuff that they do. But at the time, it was a lot about the sports games. I think there was a couple sports games that we didn't make at the EA Canada office. We didn't do Madden. We didn't do the college. We didn't do golf. Jack Nicklaus Golf. That was done somewhere else as well. Anyway, it was a long time. I don't play a ton of sports games myself.
I only play funny sports games, like the Mega Man soccer one, because I like Mega Man. And Dunk Lords, my friend made a game called Dunk Lords, and it's basically like NBA Jam. Like you're playing basketball, but you can like
love NBA Jam.
You should play Dunk Lords then. It's so fun. And you can play like same couch multiplayer. And I did the soundtrack, so I'm biased. But yeah, it's really it's fun.
What was the Mega Man game that you were just talking about? Mega Man
I think it was on Super Famicom. It was Mega Man Soccer, but I don't know the exact name of it because I probably played it in Japan. But yeah, you play as the different, you can either be on like Team Mega Man or you can play as the robot bosses. And then everybody has some special ability that's related to the bosses. Like Pharaoh Man's ability was annoying if I remember correctly. But yeah. Are you looking it up?
I'm not right now, but I mean, it sounds good. You know, it's making me think of is there's a game called Brawl Stars that I play on and off, and they have a soccer mode in there. So it's like 3v3 soccer, and it's normally a fighting game, it's like a MOBA style game normally, but there's a mode where you're just on a field with some obstacles, and there's a ball. And you kind of pick it up like soccer, but you can also attack other people.
Oh.
and if you kill them, then you can grab the ball.
Can kill them?
Before they respawn, you try to shoot the ball through the goal. And if you're carrying the ball, you can't attack or anyone. Your abilities are turned off, so you have to like shoot the ball out before you can attack again. It's fun. It's pretty cool.
That sounds cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed Potato said the only sports game I ever played was Wii Sports. And I was thinking my dad has only ever played Minesweeper, Plants vs. Zombies. I got him to play Rock One, and Wii Golf. And so he has he's from Japan and he still has a Japanese accent. And so when we were playing golf, he was like, oh, there's that one that you can get that it's a really long word. And, you know, like a birdie or what do you call it? Like how few hits you have to take, like, and there's different terms for it. And he was like, there's one with a really long name. It's a bird, the longest name for a bird. And so we're sitting around trying to think, like, what is this bird, you know? Like, and finally he remembers it and he's like, Arubatorasu. And we're like, wait, albatross? So I never thought, like, with the pronunciation, Arubatorasu, it's like 6 syllables in Japanese, but albatross is only 3 in English.
Got it. Yeah. You know, I don't speak. Do you speak Japanese?
Yeah, but not like great, but yeah, I can communicate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just recently learned, so I don't know much about the Japanese language, but my kids want to learn Japanese, and I've been just kind of learning through them that there is the like some words in Japanese sound a lot like their English equivalents, but then broken out by certain pronunciation characters.
Yeah. There's a lot of foreign words, and every time like I go back, it's like there's new words to learn. Yeah. It's really weird because sometimes it's just like the word with the Japanese pronunciation, but sometimes they'll take words and like smush them together. Like smartphones are sumaho, and it's because it's sumato phone, sumaho. And that's not very intuitive to like an English speaker, right? So like I would never think to abbreviate smartphone like sumaho, you know? It's very weird.
Yeah. So you have to kind of just learn them, right?
Yeah. It's like new vocabulary. Yeah. And apparently it's like kind of oshare. It's kind of cool if you're Japanese and you say a lot of these words because they think they're foreign words, but they're actually not like, you know, we don't say those words in like speaking English. So, yeah.
It'd be an English word that then goes through the Japanese. And then it's honestly, I think it just sounds cooler. When it's done in Japanese.
So this is kind of a random question. I don't know if people in chat know this, but so I heard, and I don't know if it's still going on, but if you work at Blizzard for like a certain amount of years, you get like something really cool. Like at EA, you'd get things like alarm clocks, which it's like, okay. But at Blizzard, you get things like swords, like that are like,
Yes.
is this true? Okay.
Yes, this is totally true. This is totally true. So at Blizzard, there is a tradition that if you have been working at Blizzard for 5 years, this is the first one that they did, is you get a sword. And it used to be that the sword would change every year. And because they would just like go out and find like what's the swords that are being made that year. When I hit my 5 years, Lord of the Rings was really big. And so there was a Lord of the Rings replica sword. And so everyone that year got this like Lord of Rings replica sword as their sword. And then at 10 years, you get a shield. The shield, I think they actually figured out how to standardize. It's like, it's a Lordaeron shield, and it looks pretty cool. And then at 15 years, you get a ring. It's almost like, like a college ring, like those football Super Bowl ring type things. It's a big, hefty ring. I don't wear mine because it's too big and hefty.
I'm sorry to interrupt really quick. There's a blue heron outside, and it tries to eat the fish. Okay, sorry. I'm just making sure.
Well, it's like you
leaving.
said, albatross, and then
I'm gonna ask you to repeat that last part again, because we have this blue heron that is like bent on eating our pets, basically. Like, okay, good, it left. Okay. And so sometimes I have to run out and go, "Gah, gah," and like scare it off. It's a huge bird. It's like a 4-foot tall bird, and I love it.
Wow.
But I don't want to eat it. Is it the same
bird over and over, or is it like a whole bunch of different birds who are all just keen?
I think there's a few birds, but there's this one giant brazen bird that just isn't afraid of anything. And it's just, I think they've gotten some of our fish before because some just mysteriously disappear. So I'm kind of always like looking out the window. I'm like, don't you take those fish? But sorry. Okay. So you're saying
they took your fish. Are your fish outside?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's like a little pond with koi fish and goldfish. And they just come up. They can eat other fish, but they come over and they'll eat the fish out of the pond because it's easier, to see them, and they're brightly colored and kind of derpy. So too easy to catch. So you're saying you gotta
protect them
at how many years?
Yes, you get a ring at 15 years. And then after the ring, so there's a couple things that happen. So then they said, hey, you know what? Like, we should do something a little sooner than 5. So they added a stein, like a mug at 2. And that's kind of fun. So it's nice that someone, people who are at Blizzard for 2 years get that. Yeah. And then anyone who was there longer than that retroactively got one. So that's nice.
Oh, cool.
And then as the company got older, they had to add more. So then at 20, you get a helm. And it's like this, almost like a Lich King style helm.
What?
It's pretty cool looking. So since I've been at Blizzard almost 19 years now, I'm coming up in my helm. We'll see what happens. And I think something happens for 25. I don't know. I don't remember that one. But then recently they realized that they didn't want to keep getting all the replica swords and sourcing them, and everyone had like different swords all over the company, which is kind of cool in its own way. But then a couple years ago, they just designed a standardized sword and shield. And so it's just this unique, Blizzard 5-year sword. And so that's like the standard issue now.
That is so cool.
But I was going to say, you came by the Blizzard office, right?
Yeah. And like that for some reason stood out to me as being like really, really neat. So
yeah. Well, because people could hang their sword and shield on the wall above their desk. So as you walk around the office, you'd say, oh, that person has a shield over their desk. They've been here for 10 years. And so forth. But then we didn't know what to do with the ring. A lot of people don't want to wear the ring because it's too heavy. So some people would put the ring on a chain and then hang the ring on their sword.
Yeah, that first, when I went to Blizzard, I remember being kind of like stars in my eyes because I was like, and it's so funny because these are all characters from video games, but I saw like a life-size Tassadar, I think, at Blizzard North or something. And I just remember running up to it and I was like, Tassadar, side blades! I thought it was so cool.
Nice. There's a lot of cool statues.
Yeah. And the swords and stuff, I was like, that's so neat. So if you work here for that long, you get like real, like legit looking sword. You guys are prepared in case anybody attacks the company, like in an old school battle. Everybody is equipped. Everyone can.
I feel like if you worked on Rakuen for 5 years, you should get a cool hat.
I could pull the the boy's hat. Just make like a newspaper version and be like, "What's up, Blizzard? I've got a hat too." It's like this paper hat.
There you go. Yeah. For everyone who's been around for 5 years for Rakuen.
That's awesome, man. So like, being that you've worked there for, did you say 19 years? 19 years?
Like almost, 18 and a half, something like that.
Like, how do you, I guess, like, what's your creative process like, to be able to stay inspired, for that amount of time? And like, do you do anything to get in the zone before you work or?
So I guess, we kind of talked about how there's like work and then there's like game jams and stuff, and I think that the process is actually a little different between the two for me, at least. When it comes to like professional work on, a big game, the process is really about getting the team together and having discussions and brainstorms together. So if we're like trying to solve, let's say we're trying to, come up with a new item for the game or a new encounter or something like that, it's pretty common to just get a group of people together and get a whiteboard or a jam board of some kind and just throw out ideas and talk about it. And so I think a lot of the creative process works that way. If I'm by myself, I find it really helpful to use, this is just me. I don't know. So I stream some of my game jams sometimes and I use Google Slides a lot, which is kind of, I don't know, it works for me. And so I just like each slide can just hold different ideas. I can type more if I want. I can do a quick sketch if I want to. And so I try to be concrete about stuff. I think that there's some times where you're working on a problem and just like going for a walk and letting your brain marinate in it can work. But I find sometimes that's not structured enough for me. So I think getting stuff down on some sort of written format. I was about to say on paper, but what I really mean was digitally on a Google slide. I find that really helpful. I find it really helpful. I don't know if you find this. I find it easier when there's some constraints on things.
Yeah.
So by constraints, I mean like it's really hard. Like this is why I like game jams and Ludum Dare. I like it when there's a prompt of some kind and say, hey, the theme of this game jam is growth. You're like, oh, okay. And then you like start to break it down. I sometimes find that the more constraints you put on, the more your brain like engages to try and meet that challenge, right? Like if I say, make a game about growth, you're like, oh, okay. But then say, okay, you know what? Today, you're going to make a game about growth. You're going to have it so it doesn't use the keyboard. It's mouse only. You're going to theme it around zombies. Then all of a sudden your brain starts going like, oh, zombies and growth. And then like those creative synapses start firing, And so I think it's really good to have like a prompt and then put on some constraints. And those constraints sometimes just lead you down a path. And then if you find that you hit a dead end, then you can just, remove a constraint and run down a different branch or something like that. I don't know. I don't know if you find it to be similar. I mean, is it okay? Can I ask you like what your creative process looks like?
Sure, yeah. So actually, yeah, that totally makes sense because sometimes if I just go into things and I can do anything, then it's a little overwhelming and I'll get like, what do you call it? Paralysis by analysis. My friend likes to say, trying to choose something. And if there's too many constraints or variables that I have to meet, then I have trouble. But if there's like just enough, you know what I mean? Like a topic or an idea or a feeling or, something that I can work off of, then I think it makes it easier for me. Otherwise, it's kind of just all over the place. Creative process, like for me, I think it's like different depending on what I'm working on, but something that is the same. And someone asked me this the other day. They were like, how often do you compose music from feel or based on feeling? And my answer was as much as I can, because it's just so much easier for me when I'm actually feeling it. Like Chet's heard this story before, but like when I was like a kid, I used to just hear music so loudly in my head, like all the different parts and all, of the arrangement. To the point where when I was really little, I'd get confused and think it was like someone left the TV or the radio on or something like that. And I don't know when I figured out it was me or I was just like coming up with it, but I was really excited to get to take piano lessons because then it was like, I have a conduit. I can, find a way to get it out.
How old were you when you started piano lessons?
5.
Oh, wow. So you started piano lessons really early on.
Yeah.
Oh, so you had music going through your head before you were 5.
Yeah. And that's why I would get
So
really
would you
confused.
like sing them or something, or is it just in your head?
Yeah, my mom's got videos of me looking like a complete nut. We're like walking in the house like la 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 la, it's just like. And to me, I knew what I was thinking. You know what I mean? I would know what I like. The song that it would become, later in life once I had the like musical vocabulary to get it out. But at the time, I was just like, I was such a space case. Like, she's got a lot of videos of me just being in my head and humming and.
Yeah.
So,
it's funny. So I learned the cello when I was growing up. My sister learned the piano. My brother learned the violin. My other sister learned the viola, and I learned the cello. Like we were all taught a different instrument.
That's cool.
I didn't like it. So I don't know if you ever think to yourself, have you ever like asked yourself like, does everybody have music in their heads? Like, is it just me? Is it like, I don't know. Like, I feel like when you're young, like you have your experience, but some part of you thinks, well, everyone has that experience. And then as you get older, you realize, no, not everyone has the same experience as you.
Yeah.
Like not everyone sees the world the way that you see it. Like for you, not everyone had musical songs in their head that they just had to get out. For me, like I just had games that I wanted to program. And then I realized actually programming games when you're 6 is not common.
It's not, yeah.
I didn't know that. Someone loving piano lessons at the age of 5 and 6 is not common. When did you know right away that wasn't common, or?
No, like I'm trying to think. I know I had moments where I realized that not everybody liked music that way, or heard music or whatever. When I was a kid, though, I think because my mom, she's so funny. She's very introverted and shy. And sometimes she would like sing, and she'd just make up like silly songs, but she'd be making up her own melodies and stuff like that. And then
that's cool.
If we'd walk in the room, she'd suddenly start singing bad on purpose. So she'd sing really nice and pretty. And then one of us would walk in the room and she'd be like, oh, and start singing like, I think it was a shyness thing.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought maybe it was just to make you laugh, or if she wanted to entertain you.
Sometimes it was for that reason too. But I just remember being like, Mom, just sing normally. And she'd get like kind of funny about it. But so I think I always thought that she had songs in her head because she was always making up songs. But the lyrics were so goofy. It was always just whatever she was thinking at the time. Like, for example, if there was like dishes in the sink after she would finish washing dishes and someone would put a fork in and she's like, can't you just wash the one fork so that the sink can be empty? And then suddenly she'd be singing about it. She'd be like, never ending dishes, never ending dishes. And she'd just like make up a song and then not even realize she was doing it. Because later I'd reference it and it was like she didn't even know what I was talking about. So
that is so cool.
But I'm sure like at some point later, like maybe middle school, I think I started realizing that, some of my friends hate taking like music lessons. They like dread going to piano lessons or violin or something like that. And so, yeah.
I dreaded my cello lessons. I didn't enjoy them at all. I didn't enjoy, my mom said, you have to practice cello 30 minutes every day. Actually, I sent I sent my mom a link to this stream, so I don't know if she's going to watch it, but it's okay because I think she knows that I'd enjoy it.
Like, she's going to be like, what? He didn't like the cello?
We've talked about this. Well, I'll say that, like, my mom always believed it, and to a degree, there's some truth to it. It's AAPI Heritage Month. I mean, I think there's a stereotype that, all Asian kids have to learn a musical instrument of some kind, right? And there's some truth to that. Especially if you're first generation, right? And your parents move, like there's definitely a cultural sense that you learn an instrument, very commonly violin or piano. Those would be like, top two.
Never drums.
One thing I also did, or drums?
Never drums.
Oh yeah,
never drums.
Not drums, not guitar, maybe the flute, maybe. But yeah, not drums. Did you ever take, I guess two things. One, I also did harmony and music theory lessons. I don't know if you did any of that growing up.
Yeah. So like with piano lessons, I had to learn, all the theory that went along with it. And it's funny because I sucked at it. I was like, it was so not how I saw music that like I always tell people I'm a really terrible sight reader. Like I can do it, but it's so abysmally slow. Like I still do sometimes the, what do you call it? Mnemonic devices to count up the scale. That's how bad I am at it. Like my friends who've taken piano lessons the same time as me can just look at it and instantly play it. I'm like Sesame Street level with it, But I can play anything by ear. Like,
really?
Yeah, like if you show me stuff. And I actually got in trouble with my teacher because if I would have classical pieces, I would much prefer to learn it by ear. And I could go rent or check out the classical CD from the library or, and learn it that way. But then like my teacher could figure out if I learned it that way because she would be, like, what's this part here then? Like what played just this part here? And I would be like trying to figure out which part it was.
Oh, interesting. So how, but like, isn't there a point? This is fascinating to me. I didn't know that because well, okay, I'll tell you a bit. Let's come back to that.
Okay.
How do you compose if you don't like the music theory side of things? Like, isn't there a point where your instrumentation has to involve like multiple instruments or like many tracks going at once? How do you do that without the theory side?
Okay, so the best analogy I can give for that is if you're learning a foreign language and you're asked to read it out loud or something, and you're kind of rusty with it and you're kind of slowly reading the language versus if you're writing a paper and in that language, you can kind of take your time and write each thing out and look it up and stuff like that. So for me, I know the notes so I can write them down, but I don't have to do it that quickly because I'm clicking each note into place. So what I'll do is I'll hear what I want. And then a lot of times if I have my phone with me, I'll go to the piano and I'll record at least piano's nice because you can play both the chords and you can also play the melody and stuff like that enough so that you can remember it later. And then sometimes if it's very complex, I'll just record different sections. I'll be like, okay, this is what I want the bass melody to be. This is what I want the ornament stuff on top to be. And then I have enough to work off of. And then I use Sonar, which is nice because it's sheet music. So at that point, then I can just click all the notes into place manually for each instrument, and I can do it slowly. So there's also the distance between notes. I've gotten pretty good at just being able to look at it. Oh, that's a third, or I know this is a seventh apart, and being able to do it that way. So I don't have to do that as quickly as if I'm actually reading sheet music all at once.
So do you imagine the song in your head, then get it out on the piano, and then from the piano move it onto sheet? Is that the order that it happens?
That's usually
or
the
is it
order.
Wow.
Some songs, I didn't do it in that order, Cubeland. I don't know if you've heard that one. It's a song I wrote. Oh, wait, you said your child listened to that, I think, at some point. It was one of the songs, the Minecraft related songs that I had made. That song, for some reason, was so clearly in my head. Like, I don't know why. Like, all the parts were so clearly in my head, I didn't actually need to play it on the piano. So I just went straight to Sonar, and I just started like getting everything out that way. Because it was playing so loudly for days. And I was like, yeah, this is real. I like this song. And I remember telling people about it. And I'm like, oh, you'll see when I'm done. Like what I'm trying to do here.
Wow. Do you, I guess, let me try and just draw a different parallel. Like, and then I'm gonna tie it to game jams now.
Okay.
One of the reasons I love game jamming is because so most of the game jams I do, they'll start on Friday and they'll end on Sunday. Ludum Dare is my favorite game jam. It used to be 3 times a year. Now it's twice a year. So it starts on a Friday. It ends on a Sunday. I never know what I'm going to make going into it.
Oh, yeah.
And then what happens is the game... Like, the game always comes out in a way that I could not have imagined on Friday.
Oh.
It's almost like I have kind of an idea, but in the process of making it real, it takes form in a way that I couldn't fill in all the details. You know, there's too many details to fill in. So when you compose your music, like, how much is in your head? Like, is it the melody line is in your head, or do you actually hear all the like harmonies and the percussion lines and the supporting lines? Or does the song sometimes surprise you when it's finished? Does that question make sense?
Yeah. And that's a good question too. Because it's different for each song. So like I was saying with Cubeland, I heard everything very distinctly. I don't think that the finished product deviated that much from what I heard in my head in the first place. But it's not always that clear. A lot of times I just know what the chord progression and the lyrical melody will be. So I can imagine it on piano, basically. But then if I decide to arrange it later, then a lot of times it becomes more iterative, like working on a game, you know, where I'm like, oh, what will I do here? I think I'm going to add this in. And then that's more like impromptu composing as opposed to like already having it made. So for example, there's this song that I'm working on. It's called Colony 6, and people on stream have heard me play it a lot. It's about a bunny astronaut that goes with her group of animal astronauts to kind of save their planet by looking for this life seed to grow a new tree. And so we're also working on this big like animated 3D music video for that. So for that song, I've been playing it on the piano for so long, and it's kind of an intricate, changes a lot of, goes into different keys and stuff like that, piece on the piano. But I had such a difficult time arranging it, and I actually restarted. I think there's 3 different versions of it because like I would get partially through it and be like, no, this isn't working, or like this isn't grand enough at this part, or oh, it sounds kind of dippy, And so I would start over until I finally got what I wanted. And now when I listen to it, I know it's right because I get goosebumps, thinking about it. I'm like, oh, yes, finally. And yeah, those ones are much more difficult for me because it's like I'm going in blind, if that makes sense. I'm just like, I don't know like what to do for all the different sections because I think that's a different skill set is doing the arranging. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, so to close the loop on an earlier thing, the reason I asked about the harmony and theory is so I didn't enjoy the cello lessons. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I didn't enjoy the harmony and music theory lessons either at the time. Uh-huh. But now as an adult, I will say that is one thing that I wish I paid more attention during. Oh. And maybe it's like my more like mathy side, like, mm-hmm. I have, electrical engineering background. And so I have this like logical mathy brain and stuff like that. And so I think the music theory side appeals to me. And so like, as I try to learn, like, I don't know that my brain, well, I should practice, but I don't know that I'm at the point that my brain could ever compose a song in my head and then get it out somehow and then try to make it real. Mm-hmm. I think I'm more like just trying to apply music theory to like figure out what normally sounds pretty good and passable. And mm-hmm. I'll probably never be able to make something, at your level. But I feel like the music theory does help me understand things a lot, at least for the purposes of a game jam. Like a game jam, sometimes you just need enough sound to like like just support the game. And here's a celebratory sound effect. Da-na-na. You know, it's like, okay, great. Like here's the structure of that. And
Piggy pileups too. Da, 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 da,
yeah, that's a great example. No, that's a great example. We're in Piggy Pileup. I don't know if people know. I know some people know what we're talking about for Piggy Pileup. Piggy Pileup was the latest game jam that I did. And yeah, every time you connect a pig, it plays a note upwards. Exactly. And that just comes from, I think it was just built on a pentatonic scale or something like that.
That totally makes sense. That's really interesting about it. It almost feels like also with like foreign languages, like if you learn a foreign language when you're a kid or through immersion or something like that, then you don't really think about the grammatical structure. Like I never think about, if people ask me questions about English grammar, I'm like, I don't know why that's the way it is. I never think about it. But then if, learning Spanish or something like that, it's like, oh, this is how you conjugate the verbs. And in this case, you do this. And it's almost like you're retroactively, it's like two ways to approach it where you're kind of retroactively learning based on the science of it, essentially. So, or the structure.
I learned French growing up. Again, since I'm Canadian, and I went to a French immersion school. And you just sit there and you conjugate all the verbs. And it doesn't make sense at the time, but then as you start to like it's almost like all of these rules, but then you don't know how to use them properly. But then if someone asks you how to do it, then you can. But that's hard. I saw a question in chat from Zolit. Did you guys work on Ludum Dare 50? I don't know if you had a Ludum Dare 50 game. I did a Ludum Dare 50. It was a solo. That was the Piggy Pileup game that Laura and I were just talking about. The theme of Ludum Dare 50 was delay the inevitable. And so, I made a word inspired, like pigs fall with letters, and you have to connect the letters together. You have to connect the letters together to spell out words, and it's kind of
really fun. It's like super addictive. Like I played it so much. I don't know. I hope you turned it into like a full game, because I think it's really unique, and the physics aspect of it makes it really interesting too, because you're just like, it moves things around. Like a lot of the word games that are out there right now, everything's already like lined up. But this, you never know, because you might be able to spell something, but then the last letter could get knocked off because of the physics of it. So
yeah, my wife loves that game as well. She's been playing it a lot.
Is she the top scorer?
She's the top scorer, and cool. she really likes the game. She tells me that I should make a full version of it. Actually, it's interesting because at Blizzard, like I don't know what it's like. Are you full-time employed at a company right now, or are you fully indie?
No, I run a company where I'm doing like contract music and Rockwin peripheral stuff, and just like basically everything that I do is like under that umbrella. But yeah, independent.
Well, that's good, because if you're doing mostly contract work, like if EA needed you for something or something that, like nothing you do for them prevents you from doing your own stuff.
Yeah.
But when you work for, a large gaming company, whether it's, Blizzard or, elsewhere, you could be at, Riot or Epic or whatever, like normally there's some rules about side projects. I mean, this goes for any tech company, actually. It's not even limited to games, is you have to be cognizant about the projects. But Blizzard has an official side projects program. They understand that, people who work at Blizzard are often creative, and sometimes creative people aren't just creative from 9 to 5. Yeah. They're creative outside of work too. And so they have what they call the side projects program, where you can submit a project and the legal department will review it and basically give a yes or no. We think that this competes with something that, Blizzard wants to do. And if the answer is no, they say, you know what, like feel free to work on this as a side project, as long as you don't use Blizzard IP and you're not using, your company resources and it's not detracting from your performance at work. Then we, support creative people being creative. And that's really cool. And so basically, if I wanted to work on Piggy Pile Up, that's a process I would have to take. Like, game jams are totally fine, but if I wanted to work on it long term, I'd have to submit Piggy Pile Up to the legal department and get it approved. But I've had side projects approved by them before. So
that is cool. So cool. Because I feel like a lot of times big companies are very protective of that kind of stuff and they want to own everything. I forgot Todd was saying when he worked at LucasArts that they owned his likeness. Or right. I'm just what? But he's not an actor. He's a programmer. Why would they need to but they made everybody sign it. And so it just seems a lot of big companies are very, very rigid about those sorts of things. So that's cool that they allow you to do that. Cause I feel I feel like that would help you with your main job too. Because if you're just only doing that all the time, you could get burnt out pretty easily, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, I love the side projects program for exactly that reason. Is in my day job, sometimes a game director role does a lot of directing and managing, and there's a lot of stuff involved in making a game that sometimes is not directly related to the really core creative part that that, for example, you might do in a game jam.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of my creative outlet, just because I don't always get to do a lot of it at work.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you do any programming stuff these days, or is it mostly more design or management or?
I don't get to do any programming at work right now. And it's it is what it is. Don't get me wrong, we do tons of design. Lots of designers do tons of design without programming, right? But I grew up programming and I love doing it. And
what was your first
with tools
programming language?
My first programming language was BASIC.
Me too.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
My dad had a book for a BASIC book, and the reason I wanted to learn about it was because he brought all the shareware back, and I remember, with these funny little games, and one of the games had this intro screen where they have you fill in information. And there's one thing where it was what's your name, what's your age? And if you wrote something 1,000 into the age thing, then it would talk back and it would be that's not real, stupid, or something like that. And I was whoa, the computer talks back to you.
Totally. Yeah. So you did that stuff too. Yeah. When I was talking earlier about how I was programming games, I programmed games in BASIC, went up from 5 to 8. Or 10 or whatever. And then after BASIC, I learned, Pascal, and then I learned C, and then I learned C++. And, but I don't know. I don't know, this is kind of programmer talk now, but when I first started working in C# in 2000 and gosh, what year was it? I think it was 2002.
Wow.
I was working in C#. I fell in love immediately. I did Java programming in 1998, 1999, and I did Delphi programming in 96. When I was working at EA on FIFA Soccer, we used Delphi for internal tool development, and so that's why I worked on that, which is basically Pascal. I fell in love with C#. And Unity basically has a C# core. So it's crazy to me. Some people think, what's the current language hotness? And at the end of the day, the language doesn't really matter that much. But I think one of the reasons I love programming in Unity so much is because, it's a good framework, but I also just love C#.
Oh, I don't know why, but I grew up, surrounded by programmers, and I like when people get passionate about it. Like, I don't know if you saw in chat, a bunch of people like Lopar and Lunar and Craig were all like basic, because I know that was also their first language.
And Nibbles, I remember Nibbles in QBasic. That was totally a thing. I loved Nibbles.
So I think it's fun because I think programming is an art form too, and like if you look at somebody's code where it can be very elegant code, and then you can look at like my code and it's like bleh. And so I think it's very much like, I think it's fun when people are like, I fell in love with that code, or like where they see how to solve a problem in their heads. Or Lopar was talking about like how he just imagines how to solve something and thinks about it and then comes back and solves it, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah. It's back in the 80s and 90s, you'd always write things to run as fast as possible because computers weren't very fast for the games that we wanted to write. Mm-hmm. And by the way, this is a little bit of a, I don't know, long answer to a question you didn't even ask.
That's okay. I say so many things to chat that nobody asks me, and I'm just like, I just volunteer it.
Yeah. So I think about it like in the 80s and 90s, we wanted stuff to run fast. And sometimes you'd want things to be small, right? Mm-hmm. Basically, the story is about like, what are you optimizing for? And you can optimize for like code size. You can optimize for speed. You can optimize for memory usage because you have to keep your memory usage down. But then I think the thing I started doing in like 2012 with C# is computers are so fast these days. In game jams, the performance doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. I optimize for readability.
Oh.
And it's almost like I don't care how fast it runs. Mm-hmm. I don't care how much memory it takes. I care that I'm going to be able to read my own code 1 year from now and understand what I was thinking. So I think it's kind of interesting to think of optimization in that way, is that you really are optimizing for something. And that's what I optimize for now when I write code.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. Oh, man. I wanted to ask also, since we were talking about all the AAPI stuff and playing cello and and all of that, I'm curious, actually, has being AAPI influenced your work? Like, and if so, how?
Yeah. Okay. So disclaimer, I think AA technically stands for Asian American. And so I guess I'm Asian Canadian.
And I was like joking, like, okay. Oh, can't you be canceled?
Asian North American, right? Yeah. I don't know that it's influenced my work directly, at least not in a conscious way. I mean, I think that there are things like I mentioned, I had musical training when I was young, but that was more, I mean, anyone could be musically trained. That's not like a race thing, Mm-hmm. I think, I will share. So there is an interesting story. So a lot of people know me from the Diablo Immortal announcement in 2018. And I think you and I were actually talking about this before the stream, is that there was a meme made about me.
I was like, are you a meme?
Yeah. So what happened is we announced Diablo Immortal, and the reception to the announcement was not as positive as we would have liked. That's sort of like putting it in a nice framing. Mm-hmm. And people, like a lot of people, just really were negative about the game, and I get it, right? And I'm reading through Reddit, and I'm reading through Twitter, and I'm just reading through what people are saying about Diablo Immortal and what people are saying about me. Mm-hmm. And I think that there was one comment that really kind of got to me. And okay, by the way, I don't know about you, Laura, but like, people always say like, don't read stuff on the internet, or like especially like social media is bad for you. So like this is classic case where like I shouldn't even have been looking at the internet, but you just can't stop yourself. You just doom scroll your way through all the hate.
Mm-hmm.
And
why are we like this? I don't know why. as humans. Why do we do this?
I know. Well, I think I was looking for all the comments that were positive. I mean, there was a mix, but anyway, there's this one comment someone made which still sticks with me, which is they said, why do they even have Wyatt working on this game? Is it because they farmed out the whole game to NetEase and he speaks Chinese? And I think that kind of hurt a bit because I don't even speak Chinese. Like I don't know Chinese at all. But I guess, because I grew up in I speak English and French, right?
Yeah.
But I guess because, my background and my heritage is Chinese, they just looked at me, they looked at the project, they didn't like the project, they didn't like what they say, they didn't like that we were working with NetEase, they looked at I was Chinese and just made this statement. Wow, they picked him to work on this project because he speaks Chinese. And I think that's hard because I wanted to work on this project because I like to think I know how to design games. Like I want it to be about my competency or my passion for the game, right? I worked on Diablo 3, and because it almost felt like the years I had spent, like the decade I had spent working on Diablo 3 wasn't the reason in this person's mind that I was now leading Diablo Immortal. The reason was because I speak Chinese, which wasn't even true. Like that was kind of hurtful, right? Like, and I think about that too in terms of like, yeah. I think about that in terms of, like we want to see, more women in gaming and people of color, more representation in gaming. And so on the one hand, a lot of companies in the industry wants to move in that direction. But I also, I hope that people feel like, like what's it like? Is did I land this job, because, I'm qualified or because of my race, and it's always going to be because you were qualified for it and you earned it. And I don't think we should reduce people to their race, but I was in that moment, and that was, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Man, it's crazy to think that like the way, and we were talking a little bit about this in the last stream that I had guests on, but like where people can, because the way things are set up right now with social media, where people's attention spans, everything is spread very thin over lots of different places. I feel like it encourages people to have more like knee-jerk reactions and kind of like grouping people into groups. Like this person said this, they must be in this group. This person believes this thing, they must be over here. Like just so quickly, it's very dehumanizing, I think. And it's frustrating. And I think the longer, being on the internet, you notice how that's happening. And one of our other guests, Masay, was saying that when she sees comments like that she tries to think like, how bad is their life right now that they're on the internet saying these kinds of mean things, or they're having these reactions or just posting these kinds of things. And she was like, and I try to think, I hope that they, that their life gets better and that they're not, that they won't continue down this path. And I was just thinking like, it's kind of a toxic thing, I think, to get in that mode where you're just leaving those kinds of mean comments and where you don't think of people as people. And that's why I think it's so important to remember that whether someone's like making a game you like, or working on a game you like, or if they're a streamer, or, if they're just like anybody you don't know, they're all real people. And so, man, well, that's
we're doing it because ideally, like anyone who's making games, loves games and wants to bring some joy into the world, right?
Yeah. And especially, you've been working on games now for such a long time. And since you were like a little kid, that it was a legitimate hobby of yours. It wasn't like, oh, games are kind of trendy, I'll get into games. It's like, no, you like loved games from such a young age. And so I think I like having, people like that to talk to or to like tell people about them, because it's like this person's very passionate about what they do, because I think it's very inspiring. So yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Aw, that's a cool story. So speaking on that topic, what inspires you? Like, what would you say that your creativity comes from?
I don't know. I think I I think I just enjoy the process of making games.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I mean, you're kind of a, like, let me start over. Like, I think when I was young, I made games whether people played it or not, you know? Sometimes like my elementary school classmates would play them and stuff like that. But like I don't expect millions of people to be able to play it when I was, 12, but I still made them. Right. And so I think it's almost like, like people draw and sometimes people just draw because it's therapeutic for themselves to draw. And, if you make music, you would make music because it is therapeutic to make music. And it's wonderful when you can do it as a career, right? It's wonderful if you can do it as a hobby. It's even more wonderful if you can do it as a career, but like, that's not why you do it. I mean, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or at least that's not why like it's great when they intersect. And I think that's how making games and where my inspiration comes from is I just enjoy the craft itself. And it's nice when I can take the craft of making games and combine it with a career. Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, because it is very rare, I think, to be able to do what you love for a living and to keep enjoying it. Because one thing that I found when I started doing this, doing creative things for a living, was that the moment I started looking at it as work, it became more difficult to do. And I find myself sometimes having to trick myself, into being able to get started with something. And I'm like, I kind of hate that. Like, I hate that I look at it at work and therefore it causes me stress. Whereas before it was what I was doing to relieve stress. Like, I remember, like in school, I would procrastinate writing papers or something like that in lieu of like messing around with Cakewalk, so that I like old music software. It was so fun to me.
I remember a Cakewalk.
Yeah.
That was on a Mac, right?
It could have been on Mac too. For me, I had a PC version.
Okay.
But it was so fun. I just like, oh man, like the moment that I was like, whoa, I could build these things. I don't know. I just can't express, like, I had never had so much fun doing, like a creative thing, like being able to just like put the notes down and like hear how it sounds together. Like it almost felt like a puzzle piece. Like, oh, when you have this bass line and this melody, and what about if you have a little like pizzicato strings doing this up here, and hearing them all together, it was like so fun. So I was always doing that just on the side.
That's cool. That's cool. In game design terms, I think about, in game design, we talk about like extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. Sorry if this is pedantically redundant for anyone, but like intrinsic motivation is when you do something sort of just for its own sake or for the love and the joy of it. And then extrinsic motivation is because you do it for a reason other than the enjoyment of the activity itself. And so a classic example that people would talk about, I remember the first time I heard about the concept was it was when Mario 64 came out on the N64. And everyone talked about how fun it was to jump in that game, right? Because Mario could run around and he'd put his hands out and he would do this like flip when he jumped. And it was just like jumping was just a joyous activity in Mario 64 and everyone would just do it. And so there's a lot of intrinsic motivation to want to jump in Mario 64. But, games are often constructed with extrinsic motivators, and an extrinsic motivator might be like, jump on 12 turtles achievement unlocked or something like that. And the problem is that there can come a point where the extrinsic motivator makes you do something more than you would have intrinsically. And then it no longer is fun for you because now you're doing it for this other reason, not for the joy of the activity in itself. And there's like some psychological study about how actually it's very hard for your intrinsic and extrinsic motivators to coexist at the same time. It's called, I think it's called like the displacement effect or something like that.
Displacement effect? Is that what you called it?
Displacement. And a classic example that I love is if I go to volunteer at a homeless shelter, right? I can do that with my time and I can serve people. But if I then say, hey, Laura or Wyatt, thank you for coming in to volunteer at this homeless shelter. We're going to pay you minimum wage for coming in. It's like, I don't want that. And if I get that, I might actually stop going. Like if you started getting paid for something that you were going to do for free, the extrinsic motivator of the payment crowds out and displaces the intrinsic motivator, because in your head, you're like, no, I'm here to help the homeless. I'm here to give of my time. I get all the joy and satisfaction that I need. As soon as you pay me for it, it's hard for both to coexist. And so people would reject it. You can only do one or the other in a pure way. And I think that is part of the challenge of being creative in the industry when you're like you said, like if you're, sometimes you have to do something for work and it can actually take some of the enjoyment out of it. And so you have to sometimes, I certainly experience this. I have to stop thinking about the fact that I'm, being paid a salary to do game design and just say, no, forget it. I would do this for free. I enjoy it so much, and just allow that to be your day to day. And that's how, you retain your enjoyment and investment in it.
Yeah. I didn't know there was a term for it. That is so interesting because it's very, very true. Like when sometimes people will ask me like about becoming a video game composer. And my first thing that I say before I give actual advice about how to do it is don't do it unless you would do it for free. And I don't mean you should work for free, but I mean like if you don't, if you wouldn't do it for the joy of it, then you're not going to have a very fun time, because it's not like, it's not like the kind of job where you just go to work and you're going to get a salary. Like you have to work for a long time before you're established enough to make a living off of it. A lot of times you're working on projects where you're making music that you don't really care about making. It takes a long time. And by the time you get there, is it a fad, for you? Or will the fad have passed by the time you're able to do it? There's a lot of considerations. And then also once you get there, it's not like being a movie composer where when you make it, you're going to be like super rich and you know what I mean? It's like you have to do it for the love of it. Like,
I was chatting with a YouTube content creator earlier today, and he was telling me how he had a realization very similar a couple of years ago. Like a ton of YouTube, by the way, by YouTube content creator, I'm talking specifically about YouTube content creators for games, right? And or Twitch streamers, right, for games. And there's a ton of YouTube content creators who really, really get into a game, and they can produce all this content for it. But then at some point they burn out on the game and they don't want to play that game anymore. But that's what their audience still wants. And so now they feel like they have to keep making content for their YouTube channel. I've got 100,000 subscribers and they subscribe to watch me play this game and make strategy guides for this game, but I don't even play that game anymore. And they're kind of like stuck between, how they get paid on YouTube versus the games that they actually want to play. It's a tough conflict.
That is tough because people get very used to it, and if it's like a World of Warcraft channel or a League channel or something like that, and then they don't, if they're expecting a certain amount of views on each video, if it goes down because they play something else, and people are like, make more of this, play more of this game.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, I used to be part of a lot of like RPG Maker forums and game development forums, and there was
Rakuen was made an RPG Maker, right?
It was, yeah.
Cool.
It was really interesting because so few of the people in the community went on to like finish their game and release their game, and there were a lot of people there that were really smart and really creative, but a lot of times what would end up happening was that they would get like into their project and then jump on to a different project, and they'd keep doing that rather than finishing it. And there was a lot of people too who would be more interested in making their thread, like in the forum days where you deck out your thread and you have your like your signature all special and stuff like that. And then they'd be like, this is like preview art and this is this. And it was like a thing back then to have a fancy thread. And so it was like making a website for yourself almost, but in the community. And I noticed that the more, and I mean, this would apply to me too, like the more I would get into making a thread about something and looking to see people's responses about it and like, did my thread get bumped up? The less I would be focused on actually making the project. And so you'd see the people that had like the flashiest threads where people would spend the most time talking and stuff, they would never finish their projects. And I noticed that when I got really into working on my game, I kind of shut everything else out, which was kind of tough when I had to do promotion for the game when it came out, because I'm an extrovert, but it's like I became an introvert to work on it because I had to, code and write dialogue, and I was so focused at the end. So yeah, that was very interesting, like to think about that dynamic, between the two things. But yeah.
What I've been meaning to ask you, like, what's the difference for you? Like, can you tell me more about the experience of being an indie developer and like having to do the marketing for your own game, like versus, you've done it both, right? You've worked at AAA developers and you've done the indie scene. Like, what's the difference between the two?
So like for indie stuff, I think a lot of people don't understand how much work it is when you're basically like a 1 or 2 person team, because you have to do everything. Like when you're at a company, there's like separate departments for everything. You have a legal department and HR and a whole marketing team behind you and people to handle the business part of it. And then you have the creative group. So like the people that are making the game. And I think that's like kind of nice because then you don't have to you can just focus on making the game, and someone else is going to put their 100% into getting the game out to people. But when you're an indie developer, you have to do all of those things. You got to set up your business, make sure you have all those pieces working. You have to do all of the business things. You're the one writing to journalists. You're the one that's, making the social media accounts. You're the one that's...
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's a lot of work. And I think like the funny thing was, before I got to that point in the game when I was full-time crunch mode working on it, I was actually excited to get to that point because I loved talking about Rakuen and I couldn't wait to be able to be like, I want to tell people about the story. And I was so excited. And I just love talking to people in general. So I thought like, oh yeah, that part's going to be easy. It's going to be fun because I would do that kind of promotion for other people all the time. But by time like my game did come out, I was so tired because I was in crunch mode for like a half a year. I mean, it was ridiculous, and I don't recommend people do that the way that I did. So when it came time, I was actually pretty sick. I had a bleeding ulcer. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And like I was also just a lot of stuff going on in my life at that time. But I just had to really commit to it. I think I went into like tunnel vision robot mode. So I would write up things. I had a guide. I tried to get it out to as many people as possible. Like I would accept interviews if people wanted to interview me about the game. There's a lot of stuff that I would have done differently now if I could do it over again. But yeah, I think the big difference is that you have to do everything yourself. Like when you have that deadline coming out, if you've got a game breaking bug, you have to rely on you to get it fixed. There's nobody else that's gonna fix it for you. I had people that, I could ask for advice about things or for help with those things. But it's like, at the end of the day, like you're the one that's got to make the call. And that's pretty stressful. But I mean, on the flip side of things, then it's yours, it's your baby. You created it. And you get to decide, what happens to it. I think a lot of companies, I've talked to creatives that get very frustrated because they'll be working on a game and then other departments will come in and be like, I think you need to change the main character because our metrics show us that people want to play as this kind of character. And you know what? Let's, throw some microtransactions in there and let's do this. And then it's like and marketing kind of dictates game design in a lot of cases. And they expressed that was very frustrating for them. But for me, I can just do what I want for that. So I think there's definitely a lot of pros and cons with working on your own IP versus working for someone else's in that respect.
You kind of mentioned that if you could do it all over, you would do it a little differently. Like if you could go back and give yourself like how long were you working on it? Like 7-8 years ago? When did you start?
I spent somewhere between 4 and 5 years making it. And that's also because
you worked on it like 9 or 10 years ago.
Yeah. It came out in 2017.
So if we could go back 9 or 10 years to the very start of development, and you mentioned that there's a bunch of stuff you do differently. But I'm gonna say, if you could just tell yourself like 1, maybe 2 things, what would you give 10 years ago Laura advice on?
I think so one of my least favorite things about releasing the game was doing PR, because I didn't like having to email people and sell, pitch the game, because I always felt really imposing about it. And I know and it's funny because the landscape has changed so much since then. But like back then, a lot of it was about getting an article in Kotaku or, Rock, Paper, Shotgun or something like that. Now it doesn't really matter very much. But back then it was a big deal to do that. And so I knew a lot of people who were journalists, and I hated having to write and say, hey, I released this game and, if you want to play it. And because it felt like if we were, if I thought they were a cool person, I didn't want them to think that I was just writing to them because of asking for something. And I don't know if this is like a Japanese thing, but it feels so imposing to me. So it would take a lot of energy to write these emails. And then I would see other people doing PR and they would just fire stuff off really quickly. Whereas I would be like, hey, how are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And try to be friendly and stuff like that, because I was so afraid of offending anybody or imposing on people.
So I'm not just writing you to get what I want. So I'm going to
I'd have this fear too that people would think I only was friends with them because I wanted them to promote something too. I had that fear, and it was such a big fear to the point that sometimes I wouldn't even ask people. I probably should have.
So is your advice to yourself, get over that fear, it's okay? Or is your advice to yourself, hire someone else to do the PR part?
My advice to myself would actually have been to cultivate my own audience better. Because what I have found is that there's a lot of people who are looking for the kinds of things that I make. There's a lot of people who want to play story games, and a lot of people who, I'm discovering on YouTube all the time, people will be like, oh, PVC, that the music, I listened to it, it was like my childhood. And I was like, oh, is that like how Mega Man music and Chrono Trigger music was like for me, And I feel like I would rather connect with people who I know would want to listen to my music or play a game I made, rather than just like throwing stuff out there. And so the advice I would have for myself would be to spend more time actually trying to connect, and build an audience that would be interested in those kinds of things, rather than going about it the other way. Because it also feels more genuine too. Like when someone plays Rockwin and they have a positive reaction to it, or they write to me and they say, this helped me overcome, like I was depressed and I couldn't feel anything. And after I played it, I cried a lot. And then, it opened something up for me. When people tell me that, it makes me so happy. And so I think my advice would be try to find your people, so to speak, like try to cultivate an audience that, where they want to play that. So, yeah.
Totally. That makes sense. I mean, it reminds me of how, this wasn't available at the time that you started, but they have like early access is a really popular thing these days. And I think that's one of the things early access allows games to do, is to find and identify and connect with their audience before coming out, right? That's kind of a recent development, I think. I don't remember. Sometimes time blurs, right? I mean, when you were talking about promotion, I remember when, I can't remember what it was called. Steam had something like a green light. Was it Steam green light?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a period of time where like only certain games could be on Steam. And then there was a period of time where you could apply as an indie to be on Steam. And if you got the green light, okay, now you're on Steam, and that like kind of guaranteed good sales because there weren't that many games on Steam. But then soon Steam just let everyone in.
Yeah.
Everyone's on Steam
so much. We got in about 2 weeks before
now it's early access.
Yeah. I felt like we were very lucky. We got in about 2 weeks before the floodgates were opened. Like when Greenlight was still happening, I think. So if we had waited like 2 weeks, or if we waited a month to release it, I think the game wouldn't have gotten out as much. And it's not like we were like Undertale or, one of those kinds of games, but like there would have been a huge difference if we waited even just a month later, I think. Yeah.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. I think I'd also say not to worry about things, because like back then, like what you were saying about how like the comment that you read, the negative comment was very annoying, and it really hurt. So I'm like half Asian and half like European mix and stuff like that. And I get a lot of like weird things where it's like people assume one way or the other, and it really confuses me. So some people think that I'm Asian. Some people think I'm white. Some people think I'm Latina. Everyone seems to have a different idea of what they think I am. And they're so convinced that what they see me as is how I am. And that's always been incredibly confusing for me. I grew up in a predominantly Asian area, and there was a study done on biracial kids that people will think that they're what they aren't. So for example, if it's like an Asian community and you have a half white, half Asian kid, then the Asians will think that kid is white. But then if that kid goes to be with white people, the white people will think the kid is Asian. And I definitely experienced that. And so I was very like, I don't know what I am. So I've had a lot of like identity things where I don't, not know how people perceive me. And on top of that, I'm kind of soft-spoken. I'm not a very big person. So I would have a lot of times where people would make assumptions about me. Like if I'd be in a room with people and we were talking about my area of expertise, of like sound engineering or composing or arranging or something. And somebody else who was like a bigger like white dude or something would say something, like I'd be like, oh, well, actually, this is how it works. And then no one would listen to me, It was tough being taken seriously.
But you know what you're talking about.
What?
But you know what you're talking about. They should listen to.
Yeah, or I'd be pigeonholed into things like if people, like as a contractor, you work on so many different projects, and a lot of times people will come to know you through the project that they were introduced to you. So if people only played Plants vs. Zombies, they're like, oh, she has this little kiddish voice and she sings these like baby sounding songs and that's what she does. So if I would diverge from that, they'd be like, that's not what she does. She wouldn't know how to do that. Or if they heard me singing like a ballad and like, To the Moon or something like that, like, oh, she only does sad things, And so it was just really interesting that I think I just had to, I would tell myself, don't worry if people pigeonhole you or assume you're one thing or the other. Work on finding your voice and cultivating that, and people will, you'll find people that appreciate you for who you are, and understand that. So
yeah, that's good advice. That's
what
good
about
advice.
You, would you give little Wyatt some advice too? Do you have?
Oh yeah, little Wyatt some advice. Like going back 10 years?
Or even like before like you got into the industry, or I don't know, like where you feel you'd need it the most.
I mentioned earlier, I mentioned earlier that I didn't go straight into the game industry. I went and made business software for a while. And in some ways, it helped affirm for me that I really wanted to make games. But it's kind of like an expensive lesson to learn. Like it kind of took, like not expensive in terms of money, expensive in terms of time, right? Like that's like I picked electrical engineering. That's 4 years. I worked in the .com, boom, trying to just sell appliances online or whatever I was doing. And that's like 4, 5, 6 years I could have been doing games just from the beginning, I could have majored in computer science rather than electrical engineering. I could have, there weren't game design schools back in the day. It's really cool that there are so many game design schools now that will actually teach game design, game development. But since those didn't exist, that was basically the option that you had. You know what advice I would give? I would give college Wyatt. I would have loved to take a psychology class. I think of all the subjects I wish I took as an elective, I wish I took more psychology classes. I think that it would have helped me to better understand players much earlier. I find myself having studied lots of psychology since then as a designer, that I could have saved myself a lot of time if I had just studied it earlier. And I also think that making games is so much about, or maybe I would have done some like organizational behavior or something, is making games, big scale games, is so much about teamwork and people and work relationships. And I think better understanding how to be a good team player, I would have benefited a lot if I had known more earlier in my life.
That's a very good lesson, because especially in the game industry, I feel like there's a lot of more introverted people, or people that learning how to adapt to other people, or learning about, how to put yourself in someone else's shoes, or different personality types, and how to best interact is so helpful with communicating and with just being able to finish a good product. I think we've talked about Myers-Briggs before, and chat knows I love talking about Myers-Briggs.
I love Myers-Briggs.
Yes. I think I'm trying to remember.
We can talk about Myers-Briggs.
You're an ENTP or ENTJ?
Yes, that's right. Wow, did you remember that?
Yeah. Because I think it's so, I always remember people's Myers-Briggs and their zodiac. Don't judge. But I'm really bad at birthdays. I remember, roughly where someone's birthday is because of their zodiac. But I actually don't think I knew your zodiac. I don't think I ever learned that one. Pause.
I'm
Western zodiac.
I don't really follow zodiac stuff much, to be honest, but I am a Virgo.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But you're right. I'm an ENTP.
ENTP.
What's your Myers-Briggs?
Can you guess? I'm a weird
Okay.
one.
Oh man, this is hard.
Because I'm very not like a typical one of these in a lot of ways.
Okay. I'm gonna guess.
That's your hint.
Let me think.
I was the only one of these in my computer science classes too.
I'm just gonna flip all the letters. I'm gonna say that you are an ISFJ.
That's exactly the opposite of what I am.
Wait, how's that possible?
It's literally the opposite.
No, that's no way. ISFJ. I said ISFJ.
You did flip all the letters and you'll have it right.
but that's ENTP.
Oh wait, I'm confused. I'm an ENFP. Oh wait, so sorry. No, it isn't the exact opposite. I thought you were guessing ISTJ for a second, and I was like, oh, that's so funny because I'm an ENFP. Oh,
okay.
You're gonna
ENFP. Okay. Wow, I just got it totally wrong.
But like, I'm a very strange ENFP because I'm very rational, and like I do coding, and I actually like when I was in college, I was on track to become a lawyer. I did policy debate in high school, and I coached policy debate, and I was very interested in foreign policy. I worked for a research fellow who wrote foreign policy between the United States and Africa, and that's what I thought I was going to do, like for a while. So I feel like a lot of the ENFPs I know are intensely emotional, the way that and I'm a very emotional person too, but I also have like a very, very rational side about things that people are like, oh, that's weird. You're very rational for an ENFP, people say a lot of times. I also have a lot of J tendencies because I'm very, I do have OCD, and so I have a lot of patterns and things that I have to do that look very J. But yeah.
I should have gotten the E versus I. I'm actually kicking myself that I got that one wrong. Obviously, I got like 3 of them wrong, so I don't even.
You said F though, right?
But I'm gonna beat myself up over the first one because you run a just chatting stream.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Right, and so it's like, well, I mean, if one of the primary differences on E and I is that someone who's E really kind of like gets recharged and energized by being around people in conversation, and an I kind of recharges their batteries by being alone. Granted, I think both E's and I's would stream, but an I would be more likely to play a game and have people around, and an E would be more likely to want to interact.
I'm like very interactive with my chat, like
yeah. People are like, so really, that should have been a no-brainer. that I should have checked off E. So I'm really kind of kicking myself that I even thought to say I at the start. And then I do want to tell an interesting story. So I like, here's an example of why I wish I had studied this stuff more in college, but I just learned it all later anyways, is the second and the fourth letter, right? So I'm an NT, and I'm an NP, right? The second and the fourth. You and I are both NPs.
It makes us weird.
I'm going to write this down. Okay, NP is the second and fourth, and then SJ, right? So S is the second and J. So NT and SJ would be opposite, but you see both of those kind of like above average in game design.
Oh.
Yeah, I think someone did like a study of anyway. But what I wish I knew before that I learned later is that an NP, because the personality type of NP is that you think a lot about what is possible. So when it comes to like making games and game development, you're like, what could be? What are the possible solutions? And NPs love to like brainstorm a lot of solutions and discuss all the options and think about all the and make a wise and informed choice. SJs are more likely to want to say, this looks like a really good idea. I want to pursue that idea and see how far it goes. And so if I were to like come back, I'd say like NPs are sometimes frustrated if we rush too far down a design road without having considered all the possibilities. And an SJ gets frustrated and nervous when we spend so long exploring possibilities that we don't commit to a route. And so there's this tension in game development between those two groups. And when we were on Diablo 3, my lead at the time, he was a story lead, and world and content lead. His name is Kevin Martins. I love Kevin. He was a great designer, but we had some conflicts sometimes. And one of those conflicts is he wanted to he was SJ. He was like, go, go, go. We got to make this game. We got to make these decisions. If we make the wrong route, we'll correct it later. And as an NT, I'm like, no, we got to think about, we got.
So he was probably frustrated with how come he can't commit to anything and
yeah. I was like, I guess we could go with skill runes, or maybe we should have a tree, or maybe they should be items, or you have all these possibilities, and you want to really consider and make us the best decision.
Yeah.
And the SJs just want to make a decision and course correct later. Anyway, that was kind of long-winded, but the point is I didn't realize that tension was a thing. And I didn't realize that it's actually really healthy to have both types on a team, kind of working together, and that butting up of those two styles is actually really healthy for getting a game made.
I always joke that the S and J type make the world go round because they're the people that will get stuff done. A lot of my friends, I have a lot of friends that are IN something, but then I have quite a few friends who are exactly the opposite of me, ISTJ, and they're so reliable. I can always count on them to get stuff done. They're very responsible people. And it's funny because I think we both respect each other because we are good at things that the other person has trouble with. And so I always say if I know if I need to count on somebody, my ISTJ friends are they'll get it done. It's so interesting too oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think if I were, when I'm putting a team together, I definitely look to now, whereas before it rubbed me the wrong way when I was working with Kevin, I came to appreciate it. And now when I'm on a team, I look for there to be SJs on the team to make sure we get stuff done. And to keep moving forward. Yeah. I think it's really valuable.
It's so funny too, because in order, so when I take the test now, I think sometimes people will say, I don't know, I'm wavering back and forth between these types or whatever. I usually say read the description because one of them will fit who you are in the core. But I noticed I tested ENFP my entire life. After finishing Rock 1, I took the test again, and I had much higher on S and much higher on J because there were questions for things like what's more important, the idea or the I don't know how this was phrased, but the concept was they were asking, is the idea of the thing more important or getting it done more important? And I think when I was younger, I would be, the idea, but after finishing a game and shipping a game, it's I'm well, getting it done, of course. It's otherwise you'll never finish.
Well, it's funny because I told you I guessed your EI wrong, and that's a totally boneheaded move. The reason I guessed J instead of P was because I was like, you shipped an indie game. Solo.
Yeah, usually ENFPs don't do so.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, well, lore must be SJ because that's the only way you could ship a game by yourself. And so that totally makes sense that you would be NP, but then almost had to flex and learn to operate in that SJ manner to finish.
Yeah.
And ship.
And I think it was really helpful that I became aware of my shortcomings like the ENFP shortcomings at a young age, because like I always feel like I don't know who told me this, or if I was hearing someone tell someone else this or what, but something about like ideas are great, but you have to work and get it done. If you don't get it done, you'll have nothing to show for it. You know, you have to actually complete it. And thinking that, oh, I'm kind of, you know, flighty and I get all these ideas. I jump from one project to another, you know, and I think I was aware of it very young. And so I tried to work against that, you know, because I'm like, well, I want to finish things. So like, how do I trick myself into finishing things? And like, one of the things I actually did was I said, while I'm working on Rockwind, I can't jump to another project. However, if I get some idea that I'm really hype about, I can spend one day to sit there with my notepad. I love old fashioned, you know, writing on pen and paper, and I can just write out whatever I want. I can draw the characters. I can like write out the story. I can do whatever. But by the end of the day, I have to go back to Rockwind again. And that helped so much because like I get it all out of my system. And then I usually get to a point where I'm like, now I can see where I have to figure out some difficult things for this. Kind of don't want to do that. I'm going to go back to Rockwood again. So that was my technique.
Well, it's glad that you're like giving yourself permission, right?
Yeah.
And when you're working, sometimes I mean, it kind of alludes back to what we were talking earlier. You have to like feel like that you're choosing to work on this thing. And I think sometimes to feel like you're choosing to work on that thing, you go and do something else for a while and then say, nope, actually I get to work on Rakuen, you know?
Yeah.
So
do you have like, I guess, I'm not sure. Well, this probably applies to both indie and AAA, but like what for you has been like the most challenging aspect of like creating a game versus like the most rewarding aspect? Challenging or frustrating?
Rewarding is easy. It's like what you were saying earlier. It's shipping.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it really is, right? Like, like everything. It's. I mean, it's okay. Don't get me wrong. It's great to see a game as you're playing it. And I told you earlier that like sometimes, especially for game jams, you know, you start the weekend, you don't know how it's going to turn out, and so it's very rewarding to like see this thing come to life. But when it comes to like a game you want to ship, like there's very little that compares to, like getting it in the hands of the players and giving them a chance to actually see it and play it. And I mean, you mentioned this too, when you hear people reach the end of Rakuen and, you know, they say, oh, you know, this made me cry. And you know, like it's the most rewarding part, right, of game development. You asked about challenge, right?
Like challenge or frustrating or
I think this is not a positive or a negative. It's just a challenge. It's just a reality that I think maybe people don't always appreciate. Is communication on a team gets harder the larger a team gets. And so when you're working on a large project like Diablo 3 or Diablo Immortal, and it's too large for one person or even 5 people to make on their own, like you need a big team of people to make a game that's big. You have to spend more time and energy making sure you're all moving towards destination, that the creative vision is intact. Like there's just more overhead of keeping everyone aligned. And I think when you're working on a solo project, like the whole vision's in your head. And so you get to make it, you know, what you want it to be becomes what it is. But when you're working across 80 people, like obviously 80 people can get way more done, but you have the overhead to keep everyone on the same page. And I think that, I mean, this goes for any software development or any kind of like large creative effort. Like, of course, like there's overhead in the movie industry or the textile, like there's going to be a communication overhead that happens. And it's challenging. And we're always looking for better ways to keep everyone on the same page. Oh, and you know what? Really challenging in the creative space because creative people are really motivated by having input and impact on the game. And so like when you are making a game by yourself, like Rakuin, or I'm doing a solo jam, like I can look at the output and you can say, I made that.
Yeah.
Like I 100% influenced what that is. But if you're on a 100-person team, you affected and made 1% of the output. And so it can feel like you didn't make up as much of the output. And so I think part of the challenge is making sure everyone can really feel like they have ownership of some part of the game, and that their work can be seen in the output, and that they can be creatively fulfilled in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that seems like, that actually does seem like a very big challenge when you're balancing all those things and you have so many moving pieces. Yeah, my gosh, very, very different.
You know, someone in chat was talking about communication and it's hard to speak up when there's a lot of loud people. I just want to share, like we were talking about Myers-Briggs earlier, and I said about like how I wish I studied more organizational behavior and psychology and stuff like that. One of the things I found is in meetings, we've been talking a lot at work about how different people approach meetings and brainstorming sessions or creative meetings differently. And if we're working on a problem, there's a couple best practices that I've learned. One is, let's say that we want to, we want to like come up with an idea for a new storyline for a dungeon, right? Some people just like showing up to the meeting and the prompt is on the screen. New storyline for new dungeon. But some people don't like being hit with that question, right? Just up front like that. And so a best practice is to actually send the prompt in advance, because a lot of people are way more comfortable being able to like sit on their own, maybe the night before, and say, tomorrow we're going to be in a meeting where we're going to ideate on storyline ideas for next dungeon. I want to gather my thoughts and really think about it. And different people, you know, operate in different ways. Another thing is, once you're in that meeting, I think it is helpful to say, hey, let's hear from somebody who hasn't spoken up yet. And then there was another kind of study that someone shared, which is that some people, particularly someone who's more introverted, won't speak up if everyone else is talking. Like there's certain personality types is like, hey, if there's 6 or more people in the room, I will not talk until no one else is talking. And that's just how some people are most comfortable. And so we have this kind of like guideline at work now for these types of meetings where we wait up to 16 seconds to see if anyone has something to say. So it'll be like, hey, does anyone have, let's hear other ideas on how to create this storyline. And we'll just sit in silence for 16 seconds. And I'll actually count in my head to 16. And then you'll start to actually hear voices of that type of person who doesn't want to talk when other people are talking. And it's been really helpful, because often they have like really thoughtful, smart things to say. They just didn't want to say it at the time.
Yeah. I think that's so important. Like, I don't know why this is. I'm not sure if, again, because I grew up with a lot of engineers and introverted people, but I would, if I'm in a group of people, I feel very sensitive to like when somebody wants to talk and can't. So one of the things I always pick up is like some little motion that a quieter person is about to say something, but then they get cut off by someone else. I don't know why. I always pick up on that. And so then I'll be like, I think this, person is about to say something, and I think that like what you said is true. Like a lot of times they'll have very, very good ideas, but be more shy to speak up, or will be kind of overshadowed by louder people. And that's kind of cool, that like silence thing, so that people can have a chance to sort of get their thoughts together. And
since COVID with work from home, it's been interesting to see the dynamic. Because now we have a lot of Zoom meetings. And so in Zoom, there's 2 things that weren't possible before. One is, especially when a meeting hits a certain size, some people just like dropping things in a chat. So like we might be talking about the storyline for the new zone, but then somebody else wants to say, oh, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we did something as a side quest? And they don't want to detract from this, but they don't want their idea to get lost. And so they drop it in the chat. And so it's almost like you have that like asynchronous communication that wouldn't have been possible if you're all in the room together. It's kind of neat, actually. And then the other thing, kind of to your point about like coming back to like someone was about to say something, but then they got cut off. I've started even watching, you know, it's good etiquette to mute yourself, right, when you're in Zoom. But then when someone wants to talk, they'll unmute themselves. But sometimes you see somebody unmute themselves, but then somebody else starts talking and that person will mute themselves again. I like to go back and even be like, oh, hey, you know, so-and-so, were you about to say something? I saw you unmute yourself. And you know, sometimes it's like, yeah, I was going to say this, but then somebody else started talking. So I shut up, right? And that's it's kind of neat that it's kind of like the body language. It's like the Zoom equivalent of the body language of someone starting to talk.
That's so funny.
And I really try to pay attention, especially for people who don't talk up as much. I try to watch for those mute lights, you know, coming off for a little while.
I like how Lopar there said, I'm definitely a remuter.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's people I've noticed that like super introverts, like where they'll talk if there's like 3 or fewer people in the room. But like what you were saying about how if there's like X amount of people, then they won't talk. I noticed that even a lot too in my World of Warcraft guild. There was like a couple people where I'm like, I really want to get to know this person more. And you know, what were the things in Pandaria's called? Scenarios? The ones where it was 3 people.
I think that's right. I don't remember.
They were basically like mini dungeons. It was like a little shorter and only took 3 people. And you farmed for that. Oh gosh, it's been a long time, but yeah, that expansion was really special to me because I played a lot with my guild during that time. But it was during those times that I actually got to. Oh, were they just challenges, Craig? You know the ones like. The ones where, it was just 3 people. Like there was that one where you went through the snowy dwarf land. But anyways, like I had the opportunity to run those with some of my more introverted friends. And then I was like, oh, then I would learn more about them because it was always 3 or fewer people. So they were more comfortable to talk during those times. So yeah.
That's cool. Aww. That's cool that you're able to create that environment for them.
Do you have to lead? So you're a game director. What does that entail?
A game director is sort of it's someone who's responsible for the vision of the game and responsible for representing the needs of the player and the needs of the game to the other departments. There's often a lot of components that go into making a game. You mentioned marketing earlier. The marketing, that's a real need. And there's the commercial side and there's the production side and the art side. And, a game director's job is to sort of have a consistent vision for what the game is supposed to be. And well, I mean, I say consistent, but sometimes consistent's the wrong word. It's more like decisions need to be made about what direction the game takes. And there is a vision, but then sometimes you have to, like we talked about, like filling in the details and you don't have all the answers at the beginning. So then you have to figure that out and you want to make those decisions using a consistent framework. So that's a lot of what a game director does, as well as planning. It takes a long time to make a game. It could take 5 years, right, to make a game. And you have to say, okay, well, what are all the features that we're going to need for the game? Do we have the right art resources to get it all done in time? Do we have the right people in place to get it all done? And it's about planning out all the features of the game and making sure you are staffed accordingly. And if you're not staffed accordingly, maybe you have to cut the scope of the game. Working with producers and project management to make sure that you have all the resources you need and the time that you need to make the game that you're trying to make, and then adjusting accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Wow, a lot of
that's kind of pedantic. I mean,
no.
It's not very glamorous when I describe it that way. It's not very glamorous to begin with. I checked Twitter during the break and saw that you had said, "Hey, talking with Wyatt about food and boba and dim sum," which we haven't talked about yet, and I feel like we really should, because talking about yummy food is one of my favorite topics.
I miss boba so much because, like, okay, so I told Chat this the other day, but I recently found out I have a very severe iron deficiency. So I've been taking iron supplements, and I've had this for a while, but some important things were not like told to me about. One of the big things is tea severely inhibits your ability to absorb iron. Like black tea inhibits it by like 90% if you eat it at the same time, or drink it when you're eating it. So I drink tea all the time. I have it with my meals. I never thought about that. And so that's the thing. I even asked the doctor if it was okay to have tea. And he was like, yeah, it's fine. But in the context of, is it bad if you're trying to catch up on ferritin? Then you're not supposed to have it. So now I'm trying to do things right. I still will drink tea, but I am very careful to wait like 2 hours after I have iron and all this other junk. But I miss boba so much because of this, because I haven't had it in a while.
Do you have other teas? So you mentioned black tea, but do you ever do like green tea or red tea, rooibos, herbal?
I drink all the tea.
All the tea.
So black tea is the worst for iron, but even green tea and oolong, I think, prevents you from absorbing like 60%. And if you don't have an iron,
does?
Yeah. And it's not bad if you don't have a deficiency. It's more like if you have one and you're trying to build it back up again, then it's really tough for the body to do that. But yeah, I love all kinds of tea. I like all different kinds of black tea, oolong, matcha, pu'er, sencha, like kukicha. Do you drink tea?
I have a drawer that is just all the different teas. Is like, I've got some oolong and some Earl Grey and some English breakfast and the pu'er, which I always think is the funniest pronunciation, but I mean,
I know it sounds like pu'er tea.
It sounds like a fart, but the pu'er tea is great. I really like it. Chinese restaurant tea. Yeah. I think I'm not as much into the fruity teas. I don't do like the raspberry or the blueberry or the lemon and stuff like that. I like the black, red, green, or the other ones. I don't know how you categorize the non-floral, non-fruity teas, but that's what I drink. And I drink a lot of milk tea too. Have you ever tried making milk tea or boba tea at home?
Yes. So during pandemic, especially, I was like posting pictures of all the different tea drinks that I was making. I really liked doing the one with where you make the matcha with like the whisk and everything, and then you put in a glass, you put the matcha and then you put ice. Oh no, first you put like a strawberry layer of puree and then the matcha and then you pour the milk on top and it makes like these
so fancy.
Yeah, like this triple layered drink. And so that was fun. And lots of different milk teas. I have a jasmine honey milk tea over here and this is pu'er, and I don't know why I have so many liquids. I just drink like neurotically when I am trying to keep my voice good. So
sure. Yeah.
Wyatt he's the one who introduced me to cream top tea, like at 85 degrees. I hadn't had it before. And he was like, Laura, we're going to go to this place and you're going to love it. They have tea with whipped cream on top, it's like basically like it's not liquid and it's not fully whipped. It's like in between. And then they put a little salt.
It's like a cheese foam of some kind at the top.
It's so good. And after that, I was so into it. And now like I see other places kind of catching up and getting more of those teas. But yeah, and there's so much good bread there. So I have this like really
at 85 degrees?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there still like a line around the place? Like is it still very crowded?
Yeah. I still go there. There's actually there's a during pandemic. So there's this place in Irvine. Is a plaza called Diamond Jamboree because it's on Jamboree Road in Irvine.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an 85 degrees bakery there. That's where they have this awesome tea, and I love that place. And then next to it, there is, I don't remember what it used to be, but during pandemic, what it used to be closed. Oh, it's like a Chinese restaurant, but it reopened as a dim sum restaurant, Tim Ho Wan or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really good dim sum restaurant. Totally recommend going. Next time you're in Irvine, we should hit it up.
That sounds so good. My favorite thing to get at dim sum are, I can't remember what they're called, but they're like the baos that they saute. It's like a bao and it's filled with like pot sticker filling, but then they saute it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, like, is it like kind of pan fried on one side?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like kind of golden on the bottom, but it's still fluffy and good. Oh, those are so good.
Yeah. In terms of boba, someone was asking in chat earlier what I would recommend. I think just getting, like, if you just go somewhere and get their house milk tea, but for me, most places make it too sweet.
Yeah.
So at least for my tastes. So I always ask for it to be like half as sweet or a third as sweet from whatever their default is. You know what? Actually, this is funny. I said the word default. Every time I say the word default when it comes to food, I think all the way back to when I was like 1997. And I was at a Red Robin's restaurant with one of my buddies that I played Magic the Gathering with. Mm-hmm. And the server came out and I said, I'll have a mushroom burger. And she said, sure, would you like fries or salad with that? And I said, what's the default? And she looked at me like she had no idea what I meant, because back then, I guess just technology was not as pervasive. People didn't know what default meant. And my friend looks at me, because he worked in a restaurant, and he looks at me and goes, what's the default?
It sounds so technical.
Like that was a really weird way. And I was like, yeah. And she looked at me and she was like, what's the default? What does that mean? And I'm like, like if I didn't tell you whether I want fries or salad, which one would you bring? But I think we fast forwarded enough where like technology has become pervasive enough that everyone knows what default means now, I think. I don't know. It's weird when you work in technology in the industry, you take in buzzwords and you don't know which words are commonplace and which ones aren't, you know? Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
I just figured default was an obvious word.
Well, yeah, and I've heard default outside of the realm of like technical things. Like I've seen it on boxes for, I don't know, like, or test type things, like, or it would default back to something, or I don't know. I feel like I've seen it outside of video games or technical things. So maybe it was her fault. No, I'm just kidding. That is funny though.
But my buddy who was a gamer and computer games as well, but he still looked at me like he was kind of in this like 1 foot in each. Like he worked in a restaurant as his day job, but played video games at night. So he knew what I meant, but he also distinctly felt like the average person on the street wouldn't.
I think it's also because like, people don't usually use that term that way for food in a restaurant. So that's so funny.
Right.
Yeah.
You're ordering at a restaurant, right?
I love
it's like
it.
if you go
That's
to Chipotle today and you're like, I'll have a steak salad, everything default. It's like, what do you? I'll have a Big Mac with default settings.
Oh man, I want to do that now. I want to just like weird people out and just go there. Yeah. The default option, please.
Yeah.
I used to love playing Magic the Gathering at cafes, specifically Hong Kong cafes for some reason, because like because their milk tea is so strong. It's almost like coffee level, and I'm pretty caffeine sensitive. And so whenever I would drink that, like I would get really creative and like happy and just like really, yeah. And so it was so fun to go get milk tea and little snacks and stuff and just play Magic the Gathering and finding places that were okay with that too. Cause don't want a bunch of hooligans playing Magic the Gathering in your store for hours.
Well, I remember when my friends and I were playing Magic in a Denny's and they totally kicked us out. They're like,
oh, no.
get out of here. Yeah. Yeah. So you have to like, I think we just, you end up playing at a store or someone's place or something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you still play Magic?
I do, but not as often as I did before. I used to play like a lot.
There was a recent set that came out. It was like, it's like a Kamigawa revisit. So there's like some Japanese influence, but it has that, oh my goodness, what's it called? It's like this neon, there's a certain look. It's like in my head, it's kind of like 80s neon. But there's a name for it.
80s
something
neon.
wave. Synth wave. I don't know. Anyway, it's this synth wave Japanese theme set.
What? That's weird. It's a very interesting combination.
Yeah. Vaporwave. That's it. That's what Vaporwave Japanese Magic the Gathering set came out like a couple months ago.
Interesting. I'm going to have to check that out. I'm like very behind right now. I used to play like Moto back before it was whatever the modern version is. So back when it was very
Magic Arena.
Yeah. So pre-arena, I used to play and like go to pre-releases, and I top 8'd in a PPTQ with
nice
an Eldrazi Flyers deck.
Wow.
So I was pretty into it. But yeah, and I played Magic with you before.
Yeah.
Do you have
we did like a draft?
Yeah.
Right? Once when we were in the same city.
Mm-hmm. Do you have like a favorite color combination or guild or?
It's funny that I like how you throw guild in there, because that's like normally it'd just be color combination, but then you're like, no, but we're gonna go full Ravnica guild call out here. I skipped many expansions, so the last I loved Ravnica and I loved Mirrodin and stuff, but in terms of color combination, the time that I played the most, I really liked white red. Mm-hmm. And I think I still like white red to this day. And even when I draft, I think I noticed that like whenever so I don't play Magic regularly anymore, but then my buddies will call me up and they'll say, hey, let's play some Magic, and I'll look over the cards. Mm-hmm. And I think when I was playing Magic like every day and really into it, if you had asked me what color do I like to play, it would just be, I just like to win. Like I was very like Spike. You know, when they describe players like Jimmy, Timmy, Johnny, Spike. I was like Spike Johnny. You know, I'm like I like to make my own deck, but I like to win. But now that I'm distant from the game on a day-to-day basis, when I sit down to play and I'll just pick up some cards from a set and we'll do like sealed deck or draft, I definitely gravitate towards green and red and white. Mm-hmm. And I think that the blue cards, obviously everything's like balanced, but the blue cards always just feel weaker to me. And I think it's because there's some part of my brain that just has trouble understanding, hey, bounce is really good, or flying is really good, or whatever it is that's going on in that expansion. I'm like, these cards are just like all 1 mana too expensive, but it all just kind of works because then I lose to someone who's like millstoning their own deck and pulling stuff out. And I'm like, how do they get beaten by that? But they designed their set so that it just works, even though it seems like everything's too expensive.
Blue is like that. Like it was the last color that I learned. And actually, Jeff, is Jeff the one that got that high score on Piggy Pile Up? Was that?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if that's that Jeff or not.
I just assumed. But I started playing, and I don't even know if he knows this, but I started playing blue because of him. Because that was like the final frontier for me. I'm like, I don't know. It's a little complicated. This was many, many years ago. I think it was during Lorwyn, I want to say. And I played against him, and he had like a merfolk deck, like a mill deck. And I hated it. I hated getting milled.
But they don't look powerful on paper.
They don't look powerful.
Like, how can a bunch of merfolk and milling kill me?
And
right?
milling feels so bad because you see your best cards going in the graveyard and you're just like, no, stop it. So then after that, I was like, I want to learn how to play blue. Because does blue beat blue?
Right.
And then after that, I actually really got to liking blue a lot. But yeah, it's totally like Jace the Mind Sculptor, for example. Like I look at it as a planeswalker and I'm like, but then it was like such a powerful broken, card, and it just doesn't seem as flashy. It's not like some of the ones that are like kill 7 creatures, It just But when you play against it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so annoying.
Yeah. I remember when back in Invasion set, like this is classic blue. Like it's like you said, like white gets a card that like kills all creatures, right? And red gets like, I don't know, something kind of like flip a coin. If it's head, do 3 damage, and then flip again and keep doing this until you hit tail, whatever. Like they just get like things that sound really good. And green gets like a 12/12. Yeah. Black gets like summon 13 zombies. And then so during Invasion, an Invasion block, one of the best blue cards was called Fact or Fiction. Yeah. And I don't know if you remember this card, but I'm going to get it wrong, but it was something like turn over the top 4 cards of your library, or top 5. Your opponent divides them into 2 piles, and you pick which one you want, or something like that. It's just like on paper, it's just not sexy. You're like, compared to all these other things that the other colors are doing, you're like, I'm going to make my opponent divide 5 cards into 2 piles and I get one. Like, it just doesn't sound as good, but then it turns out to be like super strong.
And in all these like combo decks and stuff like that, like I have played EDH recently, and that card is in like so many, it's like bread and butter card for so many EDH decks because people are always digging for pieces. Fact or Fiction.
Oh, is Fact or Fiction still considered really good? I don't follow. Like a lot of the modern.
Like it's so old, so like I think people use cards from like way back when for their EDH decks.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and Brainstorm was super strong. It's like, but you wouldn't think it, right? You're like, oh, look at a card, put it at the bottom. Like, what? Like, that's good, I guess. And that's what it's like. Like you have like your 6/6 tramples and your regenerate monsters, and you have like you're green. You have these like huge beasts that you just know are gonna like terrorize and wreck your opponents. And then someone comes out with merfolk and milling and Fact or Fiction and Brainstorm, and you're like, you're not doing anything, and then you lose.
Yeah, that is a good description. That's what it feels like.
It's very odd. Yeah.
Oh my god.
And so, but I mean, here's the thing: is I like playing blue and white in constructed. I just can't get my head around blue in draft and sealed. And because I don't devote as much time to Magic as I used to, I mostly play in drafts and sealed. So I just end up not playing blue very often. I think you just have to be like really knowledgeable and into the meta and on top of the meta to play blue successfully.
Yeah, because like some sets, I remember usually creature kill is really good and really important. But in the, what was it, Return to Zendikar? It was the block that I was playing a lot of. Basically, like the creature, there was so much creature kill in that set. And normally, when you get it, you're like, oh, you choose bombs first and then creature kill and then this and that. Like you'd actually be passing up the creature kill because there was so much of it. And a lot of it was like in that set, after playing for a while, you realize that one of the biggest things people would lose from was they had too much junk in their 4-drops. So like all the creature goes in the 4-drop spot. And a lot of times they would like lose because they would be flooded with 4-drop things. So then it just, but it feels so bad. We're like, well, I guess I won't pick, if you're in a draft, passing on creature kill, that just feels so strange.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. I mean, that's true. Oh man. Zolite talking about counter rebels. That was, right. That was what I think Masks was just before Invasion. Yeah, it was Mercadian Masks block. And then they also had that was also the Skies decks was really popular out of that block.
Uh-huh.
That was another thing. That's another blue thing. Like there was this totally bizarre. I'm sorry. I think I could not stop ranting about annoying blue decks that just beat you anyway. But like during Mercadian Masks block, there was this deck archetype. I think it was called Blue Skies, right? And Blue Skies was like everything flies, and we can't kill anything. We'll just bounce all your stuff.
Oh.
And so it'd be like, here's a 2/2, and then you'd play your 4/4 green creature, and then they would bounce it to your hand, and they'd play another 2/2, and then like it would just like it was all just tempo based, and they would like win or lose on turn 7, mostly by like losing card advantage along the way. That was the most bizarre thing, is they're just trading bounce and
it's like death by being poked with a needle. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, but they're like giving away card advantage to gain tempo, which was so unusual for the time. But yeah, Blue Skies was like popular at the time. Bizarre.
That basically annoy you into conceding, Craig said. Yeah, definitely. Oh my goodness.
Anyway.
Have you ever played rotisserie done a rotisserie draft?
No, what's that? Rotisserie draft.
So George was the one who introduced this to all of us, but it's basically like, and it's been so long, I don't know if I'm going to be able to remember this. Like, I'm only remembering that he got a rotisserie chicken and put it in the middle of the table. But like...
Wait, like an actual chicken?
Yeah. To be funny, you know. Like
$4.99 from Costco chicken?
Yeah, from like Safeway or one of those places.
Okay.
Okay. So I think it's like you play like a cube. So I think we did this with the power cube. So they would lay all the cards out in the cube on the table, and then there'd be 8 people, and you go around in a circle, like, and you get to pick one card. And then it goes back again. So 1 through 8, and then 8. Since 8 went last, they get to pick 2 cards, and then it goes back again. And you do that until all the cards are done. And it's interesting because there's a lot of like strategizing, and this.
Because you can see all the cards.
Yeah, and you know what everyone's picking.
That sounds to me like. So there was a draft we used to call a Rochester draft.
Oh,
does that term sound familiar?
It does.
I feel like George took Rochester draft and then threw a chicken in there and called it rotisserie draft so that he could. It sounds like he renamed it so he could put a chicken on the table. That's what it sounds like to me.
Now I'm kind of wondering, and I also could be getting the terms mixed up, but I just remember he was really excited to get the chicken.
No, because it's not a Rochester chicken. Like there's no such like. It's not a thing.
That's true.
But a Rochester draft is exactly what you described. You open a pack of cards, 15 cards hit the table, and you pick 1 through 8, and then you flip and 8 back down to 1, and everyone takes a card, and then you open up the next pack and you rotate who gets first pick.
Oh, okay. Maybe they called it this specifically related to cube or something, because like all the cards are on the table at the same time. I don't know why. It could be that he just wanted to get the chicken.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Sounds, I mean, honestly, as long as there's a chicken on the table, that sounds amazing. Yeah. Is it like winner gets the chicken?
That's what he wanted it to be, but I don't think anyone wanted to eat the chicken after it had been out the whole time.
Well, because by the time you play, it's like 4 hours later, right?
I know, that's what we were saying. If you were like, put the chicken in the fridge. But that it was fun because that included all the really OP blue cards, like Ancestral Recall, the one where you draw 3 cards for 1 mana, and like OG counter spells and Time Walk. Yeah, the take an extra turn for 2 mana, essentially.
Yep. I had all those cards.
You did? Did you sell them?
Yeah, so, I mean, this is killing me. I tell this story, and it's painful every time, but, like, I mean, I played a lot of Magic. Like, I told you, okay, so I don't tell many people this, but so I had a scholarship to go to my man, talking about like Asian parents. My mom hates this story, but
I bet she does. Is she watching this?
I got a scholarship. I got basically a full ride scholarship to go to university. And in my first year, I discovered Magic the Gathering. And so it was my third semester of college. I played so much Magic the Gathering that I would like not do my homework, skip classes. And so I wound up getting a C- in differential equations.
Oh my gosh.
And that's like Math 310, I think was the course. Anyway.
That's like an F negative 100 in Asian terms.
Well, yeah. But no, here's the thing is F negative 100. Getting a C- is my scholarship was contingent on maintaining a 3.0 GPA.
Oh no.
So getting a C- caused my GPA to drop to like 2.76, and I lost my scholarship.
No. Oh my god.
Because I was spending all my time playing Magic the Gathering.
Oh no, that's terrible.
But I had a full set of multi-lands, all 40, 4 of each multi-land type. I had the Power 9, I had the Ancestral Recall, the Black Lotus, the 5 Moxes, Library of Alexandria, Time Twister. Yeah, I had all that stuff. And then I got really into Netrunner. Love Netrunner. I don't know if anyone in chat plays Netrunner, but I think that's probably one of my favorite card games of all time. And then around 1998, I thought, here's what I thought. This is 1998, right? I thought, I don't think I'm going to be playing Magic for the next 20 years. I don't think Magic is going to remain popular for 20 years. Boy, was I wrong. And I sold all of like my 50 most powerful cards to a dealer for $2,000. I should have asked you to guess how much I sold it for.
I would have guessed like 100.
Okay, well, okay, so it was more than that because here's the thing: the Black Lotus and the Moxes and the Time, like they became valuable very, very quick. So like I actually bought my Black Lotus for like $65, and I bought my Moxes for $20-25 each. I bought my Time Walk. You know what's funny is Time Walk cost more than Ancestral Recall at the time because people don't know which one's worth people are still figuring stuff out. So Time Walk was like $50 or $40, and Ancestral Recall was $35. But anyway, but these prices that I'm naming are bonkers, right? Like I think Black Lotus now would be like 40,000 or whatever.
Yeah, it's like number, a Tesla or something now. It's crazy. Yeah. And to get one that's like mint condition, like is very.
But I'm sitting here thinking Magic's not going to be around forever. Like Vampire: The Eternal Struggle was there. Netrunner was there. I'm like, Pokemon's coming out, whatever. I was like, there's like people are just going to move past Magic and on to other games. Little I know, it actually had the staying power to be around forever. It's actually the main. Like I heard that they just get bigger every single year, and if I had held on to that $2,000 set of cards.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe I'd still be playing Magic and not selling it. I mean, how do you ever decide when to sell something like that, right?
That's true.
It's never a good
With
time.
any kind of gambling thing, it's like, how do you know? Like, you can't know if it's going to go up. That is so funny, though. And I remember you said that you gave your mom the link to the stream too, so I'm just imagining.
Well, I mean, she knows I gotta see she's super upset that I lost my scholarship for our game. She knows I was playing a lot of Magic Gathering, and she recognizes that was a terrible decision on my part. That was very irresponsible use of time. So I'm much more disciplined as an adult.
That's
some lessons and responsibility have to be learned the hard way, right?
This is true. Like the first all-nighter I pulled in college, like I had discovered, like I never got to play, let's see, what was it? I never got to play Mega Man 7, which was like a Super Nintendo Mega Man, like before the X series. And it's really fun and good. And so like I had a test the next day that I needed to study for. And for some reason, I just was so determined to beat this game because when I was a little kid, I was like, one of the things I was really proud about, I'm good at Mega Man, like I can beat all the Mega Man games.
I have a feeling I know where this story is going.
So I was like getting
Mega Man test.
Yeah. I just kept saying, I can't study for my test until I beat Mega Man 7. So I think like my roommate was just like, Laura, you need to study. And I think I didn't beat it until like 2 a.m. So I basically pulled my first all-nighter studying because of Mega Man 7. I'm like, my roommate was like, Laura, you could have just beat it after the test. And I'm like, I don't know. I gave myself a goal. I had to go for it. That was not smart.
Yeah. When was this? This was in college?
Yeah. Yeah, because I had never gotten to play that game. And so when I discovered it, I was like, oh, it's on emulator. Like, I don't know if it was just kind of a rare game. So I think it was difficult to find. So, yeah.
Lots of good memories playing Magic and Netrunner and stuff like that. Lots of good memories.
Even, oh gosh, there was a time that a bunch of us went to Yosemite and we pulled an all-nighter playing Magic the Gathering, playing like Lore One Cube. And there were a couple people who actually went and hiked Half Dome, and we didn't want to tell them why we weren't going to go hike with them. So just
because we're playing Magic.
It's because we stayed up all night playing Magic, and we heard like I think a bear went into somebody else's, I don't know, it was on someone else's camp, because in the middle of the night we heard this like screaming. But it wasn't like, I don't think anyone got to clarify, I don't think anyone got attacked by a bear. I think it was that like, you know how they tell you to make loud noises to scare the bear off? Because it was like goofy screaming. Yeah. Like, so you could hear like pots and pans and like screaming and then like, oh, blah, 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 you know, like weird noises. So we're like, oh, I guess there's a bear around here somewhere. We just kept playing. So I understand.
It's funny you mentioned that. If you see me, like I'm shifting in my chair a lot and I keep like stretching out my shoulders and stuff, it's because I slept like super badly last night, because I actually went camping last night for an overnight camp trip. And, I slept, my wife and I went to a campground nearby and, you know, pitched a tent and slept, but I slept super badly. And so I'm just like, hurting all over. And I feel like I'm not young anymore. And I notice when I'm sleeping in a tent, I'm not young anymore. I notice when I'm trying to pull an all-nighter, I'm not young anymore. I feel like when I was young, I'd stay up till like 4 a.m. without even blinking. Like I'd just be like playing StarCraft till 3 or 4 a.m. or I'd be studying till 3 or 4 a.m. or playing Magic till 3 or 4 a.m. or whatever. Like I could just do it, right? And it'd be like you could get by on like 6 hours of sleep and be fine. I mean, I would do a WoW raid, and then after the raid ended, do like 5-man dungeons and then still work the next day and be totally fine. It does not work for me anymore. I feel like I have to be actually pretty regimented about my sleeping and waking time, or I'm just getting old.
And I've read too about like how bad pulling all-nighters is. And once I read that, I got like super freaked out about it. Like, I don't remember what this was, if it's an article or something, but it was just going through all the different like internal processes that get messed up if you pull all-nighters consistently. And I was like, oh, why did I do that to myself? Because I was just like, that's just what I do. I'm Laura. I'm a night owl, you know, and I didn't think about like it actually being bad for me. So now I'm just trying so hard to try to have a more normal schedule. And like, it's like fighting the ocean sometimes, but I'm pretty good these days. I've been going to bed around like midnight, I think. Yeah.
So the question you didn't ask, but I'm going to volunteer anyway, is where my handle, my online handle comes from, CandleSun.
Oh yeah, I actually did want to ask about that.
Well, I mean, it comes from being up late and doing all-nighters. Is because like what happened is, so I'm writing games, right? And so when I was like, 12 years old, 14 years old, writing games and making these games, and then you'd have to like, this game was by, Wyatt Cheng. And then you want to put a company name in there. Cause I mean, I'm 12 and I think it's cool to say that I'm from a company. Right. And so I say Wyatt Cheng Candlelight Software. And of course, I mean, it's not a registered business or anything. It's just a 12-year-old putting a company name because that's cool. And so, yeah, it was Candlelight Software. And it was Candlelight Software because I was always staying up late playing games or making games or, like programming. And then so Candlelight Software is how I signed all my games. And then, like everything comes full circle. Earlier on, someone was talking about Nibbles, right? We got Snake games. So there was a Snake Nibbles clone I made. It was multiplayer, 4-player. It had modem support for multiplayer, which is really cool. And it had a jump ability, so you could actually jump a snake body. But anyway, all that to say it was by Wyatt of Candlelight Software. And then one of my friends started calling me Candleman. And so then because it was Candlelight Software, hey, Candleman. And so then when I needed to make an online name for myself, I started using Candleman or Candle. But then if you just go Candleman and Candle, and then I start like making, I don't know, online names, like turns out Candle and Candleman are actually taken a lot of the time. Because that's how the internet works. And so I added the SAN, Candle San, sort of like, in Japanese, they have that, like, it's like a title or like, there's a name for those suffixes, san and anyway, I can't remember what the term is.
Yeah, san. Yeah, like Saito-san.
Yeah, and so
our mascot.
Yeah, and so it's Kendall san, and so that's where it's from. And you know what? That name was never taken. So I got to like grab the Twitter handle for it and grab the Twitch handle for it because it's there.
That's cool. I think I asked you this before, but I forgot it. And so then I was trying to remember it because I saw it the other day. I was like, what Candle Sun? What was that?
Yeah. It all comes from staying up too late, programming and playing games.
That's cool. If you started your own company, if you ever like went indie, what would you call your company? Would it be Candlelight Software?
I'm gonna awkwardly decline that question, but I'll tell you why.
Oh, okay. Because it's happening and you don't want anyone to take it. No, I'm just kidding.
So earlier on I told you about the Blizzard Side Projects program, which allows people to just, like people who are employed at Blizzard to make games if it's approved by the company. And so I do have a company, but there's a part of me that doesn't want those games to get visibility because people know who I am from Blizzard.
Okay,
there's a part of me that wants to see if those games can be successful on their own merits. And so I do have a company that I would publish my side projects through and not put my name on it. Because there's a part of me that, I want to know, like, how much would people want to play these games if it was just showed up on Steam or the App Store one day, which is tough. It's a little ironic, right? Because I feel like the difficulty of every indie developer is marketing. And every single indie developer pulls every single possible trick out of the bag that they can to market their indie games. And so, but I'm not an indie developer. I'm, a fully employed developer. And so I have the luxury of just kind of like throwing out that experiment and seeing what happens. If I were not at Blizzard and a full indie dev, then I would pull out like every stop that I could to market my game. Because that's, like we said, that's the hardest part about indie development, or one of the hard parts of indie development is you have to do the marketing yourself.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah. Well, I will be playing Piggy Pile Up if that one ever comes out.
I mean, I guess the cat will be out of the bag if I ever make Piggy Pile Up, because you're like, oh, Piggy Pile Up made by this company, and like, and then you'll know.
What I'm so proud of in that game? I spelled diarrhea. It's a hard word. Most people don't even know how to spell diarrhea, let alone spell it in Piggy Pile Up. But I did.
Like diarrhea.
And then when I forgot if I said this to you on Twitter, but I think my original wording was I got diarrhea, but then I was like, wait, no, that sounds bad.
Wyatt, I have to, very excited. I got diarrhea.
I gotta tell you something.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think if Piggy Pile Up turned into a real game, and by real game, so an interesting thing. Okay, well, let's get back to game development, because I think people sometimes I like talking about game development too. Is leaderboards only get you so far. So for a lot of my game jams, I like putting a leaderboard on there.
Yeah.
Because for an audience of 50 to 100 people, leaderboards are great. I mean, that's why I think leaderboards are really good for Pac-Man and Space Invaders, in the arcades of the 80s, is because your audience size is very small. And so you have these small local communities of people who can compete. But leaderboards aren't good on a 1,000 plus scale.
Yeah.
And so unless your game is only ever going to reach 100 people, leaderboards is not a long-term plan. Because it's just not motivating enough. And so Piggy Pile Up, ultimately, the final form, so to speak, of Piggy Pile Up is not a leaderboard-based game. It's probably a game where, let's use Plants vs. Zombies as an example. The levels are fixed levels with randomness in them, but they have a theme and a structure. And so you're like, oh, this one's about the roof. This one's about night. This one introduces a new zombie type that you have to beat. And so I think in the Piggy Pile Up world, there's a level where the goal is to spell diarrhea. And you're like spell diarrhea to beat this level, or whatever, right? Well, probably,
yeah.
But it's probably spell. I mean, you probably pick a 5-letter or 6-letter word, but it probably use common letters. So but a serious example would be common letters are THIE,
RST and L. Wait, what is, in Wheel of Fortune?
Resting, right?
Yeah.
It might be spell resting to complete this level, and then you just have the levels, and then that becomes the goal of that particular level of the game. And then you'd probably have different levels, and each level has different word that you're trying to spell. And I think that something like that could be really fun.
Yeah, I think that would be fun. Yeah. That's
I mean, right now, I think it's fun to compete on the leaderboard, but it doesn't scale.
That's true, because it'll get to a point where people, when there's that many people, then you can get the highest, near highest score, and then it's hard to kind of for people just coming into it, to compete.
Yeah.
So
and that's why for a lot of single player games or PvE games, it's better to have fixed measuring sticks that you measure yourself against. So you say, hey, rather than saying, am I the tallest? You just have a level that says, are you at least this tall, right? Are you at least able to clear this level? And then you just put a series of challenges in front of the player, which is kind of a more broadly scalable format than a leaderboard that someone is guaranteed to be a loser on 100% of the time.
That's true. One of the things I wanted to ask you about too was because I don't think we got to this question, but since you've worked on so many different games, both indie projects and stuff at Blizzard and EA, do you have a favorite project or a favorite part of a project or something like that you can think of that was the most fun for you to work on?
Favorite project? I think I have to duck out of that question. I don't know that there's a favorite project. I think I've loved almost all the projects that I've worked on. I've loved a lot of the projects that I've worked on in different ways. I hate to cop out. I'll just tell a sweet story rather than a absolute favorite. There's a game that I made for a game jam that I never published publicly. It was not for Ludum Dare. It wasn't for any official jam. It was just me and some friends wanted to make a game on a weekend. So we did. And my wife loved it. And so I never released it publicly. And so there's probably about 15 people in the world who've played it. But of the 15 people in the world who've played it, my wife has played it like 98%, of all playtime. And I really like the game, and she really likes the game. So I think just in a lot of ways, it's a game that I just kind of made for her.
Oh, that's sweet. That's really cool.
So that was a lot of fun. And in a lot of ways, I mean, I would say the same thing about Piggy Pile Up too. I mean, my wife really likes Wordle. I'm playing Wordle too. And my wife really likes pigs. And I think it was just like, hey, in this game jam, in a world where everyone's playing Wordle and my wife really likes pigs, that's why I made Piggy Pile Up.
Combination, yeah.
Yeah. So I think in terms of fun, I think it's really, and actually it's funny. Not funny. I mean, I think it's interesting that Josh Wardle gave a talk at GDC this year, and he kind of talked about how he made this game in a lot of ways for his girlfriend as well. And so I think there's kind of this like sweet game developers love letter where you make your game for an audience of one, and it resonates with millions. And I think that's really neat. So this
cool.
game that I haven't talked about, it's not Piggy Pile Up. It's this game that we jammed out years ago. I still hope to maybe put it out there someday. And maybe this game that I've made for an audience of one will be out there.
That would be cool. That's a nice story. I like that a lot. I like when, because people don't, I think they wouldn't always assume that like games could be like a romantic thing or a gesture of love or something like that. And I remember I thought about that a lot when, did you see Stone's talk at GDC about like 17 years? Yeah, that's like my favorite GDC.
His two boys.
That talk, I teared up at that talk, like specifically at the line when he said he was losing his captive audience. I was like, because they're going to college, but yeah.
And he made them for as a Christmas gift every year.
Yeah. So for chat.
Yeah, it's really sweet.
There's this GDC talk by one of our friends who he's got 2 kids, and every year for Christmas, starting from when the older one was maybe, I don't know, a few years old, he would make them like a board game, some kind of, physical game. And then it just became a thing where every year he would make, and he's a game designer, and every year he would make a new game for them until so when he gave this talk, I think the younger son was about to go to college or something like that. And so he just basically talked about each game, every year. And so it's sweet.
Yeah.
Aww. That's cool.
The private game that I made has a leaderboard, but the leaderboard isn't really the point. It's kind of it's in the roguelike family. And so I think it's games can get replayability from different sources, right? The leaderboard is one source, but it's very limited and doesn't scale. PvP games, get replayability from PvP nature, but are very hard to make in a way that's compelling. Plus, PvP games that get the replayability from PvP need large audiences for good matchmaking. So there's a challenge there. And then PvE games that have a lot of levels and content can get the replayability as long as you can keep putting out content. Roguelike games are amazing because you can get a lot of the replayability out of carefully crafting random experiences each time that you play it. And so that's sort of the secret game that I jammed out and that I still have a passion for to make someday. Just too many games to make, not enough time.
Aww. That's really cool.
I don't know if you ever compose songs specifically for people, but there was a game I made for one of my close friends for his wedding. I was a groomsman in his wedding, and so I just made an image swapping game, and I grabbed all the pictures I had of him and his wife, and just kind of made a quick game out of it and sent it over as kind of like I gave them a separate real wedding gift as well, but it was like a wedding
You're
gift
like, here's a toaster and a game.
Yeah. I mean, I think some people would be like, okay, yeah, but did you see our registry? But yeah, I gave him. It's nice to be able to do that for people, right? Like I'm not musical, so I can't. There's no point at which I'm going to perform something for someone as a gift of tribute. But it's nice to be able to do a game for someone.
Yeah, because it's like a creative thing, and like ever since I was a kid, I liked giving gifts or doing commemorative things related to like inside jokes that my friends and I would have. So I was really into drawing like comics, and I would so if we had some running joke or something like that, I basically like or memorialize it or whatever, like in the form of like a 5-page comic strip or something like that.
That's awesome.
I went to this one summer camp too where like I basically told the story of all these jokes and like kind of made a silly plot and then strung it all together, and then we photocopied it and everyone went home with a copy of it. So there's those kind of things where sometimes too, one of my friends, she made a game called A Quiver of Crows, and it's like a shooter. And at the time, she had a whole lot of.
That sounds super familiar.
Have you played it? It's very difficult.
I have.
Shmup where you play as a crow.
Okay.
But like, yeah. So she asked if I wanted to do a song for her, and so when I wrote the song, because at first, so they actually I think they wanted to have a whole story, but then they kind of ran out of time. And so they're like, okay, there's not really going to be much of a story. And usually that kind of is helpful to come up with a song. So then I was like, I actually ended up writing the lyrics from her perspective, like of a lot of the things that she was going through at the time. And yeah, so when I gave it to her, I was like, hey, this is for your game, and it's your song too. So to kind of, like a hope song, like you'll get through the things that you're dealing with right now. And she did. So yeah, like.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
So I like to ask everyone this question.
Okay.
And I always say, chat, if you haven't chimed in yet, feel free to give yours as well. I always say top 5, and I pick 5 because like I can't just pick a few. Top 5 video games, and like why?
Top 5 video games. Mm-hmm. Oh, when you say top 5, like it reminds me immediately. I think there was this John Cusack movie, Frequency, I think it was called, or something, or High Fidelity. Or I can't remember the name of the movie, but the whole movie is just them doing top 5s of movies and stuff. But yeah, I like the top 5 games way more. This is top 5 games to play.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Of my whole life.
Yeah, if you made the game and it's fun to play, you can include it.
You know what? I'm going to deliberately just rule out all Blizzard games and games that I worked on for the purposes of this list.
Okay.
It would be too hard to stack, Diablo and World of Warcraft and stuff, Overwatch into the list. Okay. I'm going to type it on the side. I hope people don't have to listen to my keyboard. You probably do.
It's not a bad,
because I only get 5, right? So I have to really think it through.
And while you're thinking about that, let's see.
Yeah.
Scribbles. Chrono Trigger. Good pick. Is Terranigma the game, the Enix game, where you play as kind of like, it's like a sim game where you're kind of like, I think I played Terranigma on Wii, the virtual console. What about most influential games? Ask Boo. You mean games that like influenced us, or?
You know what? Plants vs. Zombies would almost certainly make the list, but I'm going to exclude that one too. So we're gonna exclude games that you or I have worked on and Blizzard games. Okay. So no particular order. Street Fighter.
Oh, with the original one or Street Fighter 2?
So they're all influential. I played the original. Actually, oh my goodness! Like I don't.
Fufu loves Street Fighter 2.
Super early on, Street Fighter 1. There was this one Street Fighter arcade machine that was in my city that I haven't seen it since. It only had one punch button and one kick button, and they were huge and they were pressure sensitive. So if you wanted to do a jab, you tap the button, and then a strong is hit it harder, and then a fierce was hit the button really hard.
Wow.
That was crazy. I haven't seen that since, but that was for Street Fighter 1. But I didn't really get into Street Fighter 1. Street Fighter 2 was when I was old enough to be out in arcades on my own and had enough money to actually spend money at arcades. So Street Fighter 2. But if I were to pick my favorite Street Fighter, we're going to get really, really granular here. I liked it was Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition. Because I know like Guile and Ryu were like a little overpowered in that version, but I only played Ryu, so I didn't mind. And Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. I also liked a lot.
That's
and I know there was like alpha afterwards. And
is Turbo the one where Ryu gets the stubble? Because there's like
well, the Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo was the one where like they had like Fei Long and Cammy and DJ.
Oh,
there were 4 new. It was like the new challengers or something like that. So I loved that one. There, I grew up just outside of Vancouver. I mentioned I worked at EA Canada, which is in Burnaby. There was this arcade in Burnaby called Lester's. It was a 24-hour arcade, and I used to just go there, and people would just play all the Street Fighters there, and put your quarters up and challenge. Second game, actually, I know you and I will connect on this one for sure. Minecraft.
Oh yeah, I play a lot of Minecraft still.
I adore Minecraft. I still love going on a Minecraft binge now and then. That game is, it's just, and I play a lot of modded Minecraft. I mean, I'll play vanilla Minecraft and it evolves over time, but man, you get some mod packs in there and it's just a whole other experience.
Yeah.
So I can think of few other games that, kind of like, I don't know, I just could never get enough. Just wanted to keep Minecrafting.
I've never gotten tired of it. Like, I can keep coming back to playing it.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes if I am not motivated, I'll actually just start a survival game and be like, how quickly can I get this up and running? Just because I want that feeling of survival. And then once I get there, I'm like, okay, now I'll go, back to work or whatever. And like,
wow. I was going to ask you if you like start a new world or like, some people just have one world that they've been in for like 8 years. So I don't know what is more your style.
I have both, but I think the stuff I do more frequently is just to keep restarting over and over again. Just because I don't know, it wakes up some part of my brain.
I love modded Minecraft packs, as I mentioned, and there's some really good quest packs. There was a quest pack called this is going back a couple of years now. It's called Agrarian Skies, and Agrarian Skies is one of those sky block maps. So basically, you start in the sky. The whole world is totally voided. You are standing on a single grass block in the sky with a chest in front of you, and inside that chest is a sapling and some bone meal. And then they have all these recipes to basically, like, you grow out a tree on this one block, and then you sift out the leaves to make a sifter to get some sand and some dirt, and then you like basically build out your whole world, and the whole thing is driven by the fact that there's all these quests that drive you forward to explore more of the tree. And I just, oh my goodness, like I think I've played Agrarian Skies start to finish like at least 3 times, and it's like that's like a multi-100-hour commitment each time.
So. That's crazy. Wait, how do you make sand out of leaves? Is that like a regular thing, or
it's
is that
from
part
the
of
mod pack? So there's a mod. I can't remember what it's called, where you make a crook, which from sticks, and then the sticks let you break down the leaves, and then you take these fallen leaves and make a sieve, and then you filter the leaves for dirt or something like that. I don't remember the details, but there's this whole process but anyway, it's super cool to just have the skyblock map where you just start with one block and it just builds out. And you know what? Here's the thing is, I feel like Minecraft was actually the genesis of so many other game types. Like, you know, when people talk about like Warcraft 3, and from Warcraft 3 spawned tower defense games because of the custom map editor, right? And from Warcraft 3 spawned tower defense games. From Warcraft 3 spawned Dota.
Yeah.
Right? And League of Legends. And like, I feel like from Minecraft spawned survival games. Like all, you know, well, Raft, or even, what's the other?
And all the crafting games too. There's so many crafting games.
7 Days to Die. Yeah. From Minecraft also spawned like Rust or something like that. Or like not directly, but definitely influenced in the thinking, you know? And then from Minecraft also spawned Factorio, which I also love. And Factorio and what's that name of that? There's like a factory game from Coffee Stain. It's on. I'm blanking. I guess bad night's sleep. Plus, we've been talking for a while.
Yeah.
Satisfactory. Right. And I feel like actually Factorio very clearly comes from modded Minecraft, because when you first get into Factorio, and I don't know if they still do this today, but it actually calls their power MJ, which was Minecraft Joules. Because the original Minecraft factory mods had an energy system based on Minecraft Joules, MJ, like Buildcraft and stuff like that. And then out comes Factorio, and hey, there's like, you get some coal, you mine some iron, you mine some copper, it smelts. Like, it's clearly a factory-oriented side of modded Minecraft. So it's just Dyson Sphere program. So it's kind of amazing how influential Minecraft has been, just spawning off all these subgenres of games.
Yeah. It's so neat how it's got like, oh, no, that's cool. It's very, very neat, like how open it is, like, and yet there's like, you know, just this system of putting things together, but somehow it unlocked so much creativity. Unlike, I mean, gosh, it's crazy how many things people have built because of it. So yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Terraria. That I was trying to think of.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I was gonna say Terraria, but then I was like, oh, I don't know if that matches what you were saying or not. But that's usually the first. Starbound.
And then I feel like, I mean, this is a little bit more of a stretch, but even like Stardew Valley, I feel like there's like some influences and stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is kind of a long list. I'm going to go faster through this.
That's okay.
XCOM 2, War of the Chosen. I love that game.
I'm not familiar with that one.
So XCOM is like this tactics game. It's a tactics game on a grid. XCOM 2, like XCOM is actually an old Sid Meier game from, I want to say like the late 90s. And then it kind of lay dormant and they didn't do much with XCOM for a while. But then all of a sudden they made a new XCOM in like, I don't know, 2010, 2014, something like that. And they made XCOM 2. Then they made XCOM 2 War of the Chosen. And XCOM 2 War of the Chosen, so it's a tactics game. It's like top down. You have units, you have a squad. Your squad is like 5 people. You can play in Iron Man mode, which means if one of your units dies, it's gone forever, like permadeath. But you level them up. Super challenging. It's turn-based.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You know what? If you like it, it's a very specific kind of game. I think it's like some people are like just crazy into it and some people just don't care for it at all. And that's fine, right? Like different games for different audiences. But I love XCOM 2 War of the Chosen. I think it's probably one of the best XCOMs out there. Game number 4 would be Rust.
Is that the one where you start naked and you have to like, okay.
I think I've played like 1,000 hours of Rust. I like to say I liked it before it was cool, because I think there was like a time like a year or two ago, a whole bunch of streamers started like dozens of streamers would hit the same server and they do all this like weird stuff. But I played it like 6 years ago before it was actually released. I'm gonna just be hipster Rust liker. But Rust was super fun. Sank thousands of hours. Was never very good at it. Like it's amazing how fun I thought it was, even when I was terrible at the game.
That's a good game then, I think. Like if you can enjoy it and not like, even if you can't be Spike about it, then that means it's a good game, I think.
So like one of the most, like we talked about, like there's games that just are very peaceful. Like you mentioned, like playing Minecraft. How you just like seeing how far you can get to a stable state on survival. Like I don't know why, but I love mining in Minecraft. And even in vanilla Minecraft, I can sit there with a diamond efficiency fortune pick and just mine. And I can have like 87 diamonds in my base and I'll still just strip mine at depth level y equals 12 or 10 or whatever. And I can just do that for hours.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. It's so relaxing. And I feel like I would do the same thing in Rust. Like I liked going out. I liked mining. I liked gathering materials. I liked building my base. And then I'd get into a firefight with guns with people and die and get shot every time because I'm terrible. But I still enjoyed the gathering and building parts. So I just
I'm
kept
bad
playing.
at
And it's funny because when like battle royales became really popular with like PUBG and Fortnite and stuff like that. But I mean, I would argue that battle royale really kind of came from like Rust and like I guess it was DayZ before that. I mean, there was a bunch of like none of them had super hit it big, but there were a bunch of games that were kind of experimenting with this idea that you could just put like 100 people into a battlefield and play. And Rust was one of them. They had a mode where you would just be thrown in and shoot each other and see if you could last half an hour. But
yeah, I was gonna say that like with a lot of games, like with Destiny 2, for example, I'm not very good on console FPS, but I love just flying around, and exploring, like, and just going into the town and trying to climb in weird places, like I'd go into the barn and that little outpost thing and just see if I could climb. I don't know. I usually find other things in games that I like to do, or even in like World of Warcraft, like I didn't enjoy WoW until I went off and played on my own because I was always playing with people who had played before. So they were like, oh, we'll just run you through all these quests. And so I never really like got to experience it for myself until I like went back with my blood elf and like as a blood elf hunter, but I really wanted to make sparkly weapons. So I got enchanting and, there's like no point when you get tailoring if you're a hunter because you can't wear like, or you can, but yeah.
I mean, you could do it, but you wouldn't.
Right. But I would just get it to get the mats, like before like you could get on the auction house. So I would just farm trolls in like the Blood Elf starting zones. And then, so I just started learning things and exploring on my own. And for some reason, that element of it, like feeling like, oh, I'm kind of learning slowly, even if it's not at the same, like, didn't have a max level character at the time. I was just learning on my own. And that's when I really fell in love with the game because I'm like, oh yeah, this is so cool. And like I remember discovering what's the instance in the Blood Elf Lands, the troll one, is it Zulamon or it's Zul something? But it's a much higher level instance.
I don't remember.
But like, I remember like wondering, because like when visiting Blizzard, there was a hotel that had this like waterfall network thing in the back that I thought looked just like, just like that instance.
That's cool.
And I was like, oh, since it was so close to Blizzard, I was like, did they get inspired by this hotel's waterfall?
By that. Right. I think there's actually a street in Irvine called Hearthstone.
Oh, really?
I could have sworn I drove past that.
And the two Japanese grocery stores that were trolls, Marukai and Mitsuwa, I think, were like two trolls.
Oh, yeah. And Mitsuwa is the Japanese grocery.
Yeah. I'm like, did they survive the cataclysm? I remember I went around looking for them.
That's funny. I'm going to cheat for my fifth game. I'm going to throw out Magic the Gathering. It's not a digital game. I don't know if the question was digital game, but
you can say that.
I mean, we talked about it earlier. I mean, what an influential game for most game developers and designers.
Yeah.
I think that one's self-explanatory based on everything we've talked about today. It influenced me by causing me to lose my scholarship.
This is good picks. And yeah, that's true. It's digital now, so.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's cool. You, if I remember correctly, are really into escape rooms. Is that true?
Yeah. So I asked you about this a little while ago because when I was playing Rakuen, I was thinking, wow, some of these puzzles are kind of escape room-ish. And I wasn't sure if that had like informed you or influenced you at all, or if you were into escape rooms. And I think I asked you if you're into escape rooms and you said you hadn't really done one yet, huh?
Yeah, I've never done one. But I always kind of liked, because I think escape rooms, I'm not sure like if you'd say it's influenced by this, but something that came before escape rooms were a lot of the mechanics in like point and click adventure games, things where it's like find a key to unlock this thing, to look at the riddles, to do this other thing. And I always thought that kind of stuff was so fun. Like even as a kid, I would, write down like if there was some puzzle or riddle with like anagrams or, something like that, and just try to, solving those things were so fun to me. So what a lot of people don't realize about Rakuen is that it's actually kind of a point and click adventure, but with, like you don't, you can use the mouse, but you also use arrow keys. So it functions like a JRPG, but there's no battles. And it's not a walking sim either because there is gameplay, but it's really more like point and click or escape room kind of gameplay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to give any spoilers, but like there were times when I was like, oh, like this totally feels like an escape room puzzle. Where like, again, without giving away any spoilers of the game, I'd be in one room and I have to observe that room to then go to another room and use like connect that like you don't tell the player that you're supposed to connect the two. The player has to make that mental leap themselves. And I think that's the kind of thing that happens in escape rooms too. But yeah, no, I love escape rooms. So I actually design escape rooms on the side as a hobby. So about 4 or 5 years ago, one of my Blizzard coworkers, again, this is part of the Blizzard Side Projects program, wanted to open an escape room. We would go and do an escape room. And he goes, wouldn't it be fun to make an escape room? And I was like, yeah, that would be fun. So like 4 of us got together and we designed an escape room and opened it up. And at this point, I have worked on 4 different escape rooms now as an owner, partner, designer. And I mean, the pandemic really kind of hurt the escape rooms business. So we almost closed. I actually had to put some money in just to keep the lights on and pay rent. But I mean, designing escape rooms is super fun. And I think I've done over 50 escape rooms at this point.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
I would totally encourage you to give one a try. I would totally encourage you to. I mean, I think you would. I mean, if you like the JRPG puzzles and point and click adventure style stuff, like it's really good. And by the way, a common misconception about escape rooms is there's this sense like, what, they're gonna lock me in? What happens after an hour? I'm gonna get claustrophobic. So like,
I was wondering about that actually.
I'm sorry?
Can you leave? Like, how does that work? Because I am very claustrophobic.
Okay. So I'll tell you two things, okay? So the first is when so I was very sensitive to that. So at the escape rooms at my escape room business, we don't actually lock you in. Mm-mm. And so what we do is the door that you go in is not the door that you come out. The door that you went in is unlocked. And if at any time you want to leave, you just open the door and leave. So we don't even, we kind of call them escape rooms, but I like to think of them more as puzzle rooms or puzzle adventures or a real life experience, right? Mm-hmm. So you go in and your exit will be a different door. So we can put a lock on the actual exit, but coming out, the way that you came in, you can totally just back out anytime you want.
Oh,
so yeah, don't worry. And for a lot of escape rooms too, like it'd be totally against like fire code safety regulations to
lock people in.
Like lock people in, right? And then the building starts burning, and
you haven't solved the riddle yet.
Escape rooms have been closed for not having an escape. Yeah, it's a pretty bad idea.
Gosh.
So the flip side of that story, though, okay, is I love doing escape rooms, and so I was actually like 4 or 5 years ago, I was in China. For work for Diablo Immortal. And I was there over a weekend. And so I said, hey, let's go do an escape room. And so we went to do an escape room and they actually locked us in. And we totally freaked out. I was like, you can't do that. And they're like, we lock you in. And so
oh my gosh. That's terrible.
I'm like, wait, what about the fire safety regulations? I guess I'm in a different country now. Like maybe that's not something that they pay as close to. I don't know. And maybe this person was flying under the radar. Maybe they were breaking the law with that, or maybe the fire inspectors hadn't gotten around yet. Like I don't know what the deal is, but that was like really freaky. So anyway, we escaped.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, that was not cool. But here in the States, do an escape room. The entrance is still locked.
I won't do an escape room in China, but in the US, it's okay to do an escape room if you're claustrophobic. My goodness!
I've done escape rooms in a lot of different places. Totally recommend. And it's really fun actually to design escape rooms because it's it's kind of like the difference between a digital game and a board game. Like there's things board games can do that digital games can't. And sometimes it's meaningful in a way that you don't always think of. Like, for example, this is a really obvious example. It's way cooler to hold a cool playing board game piece because you can't touch a digital piece, right? But then also like probabilities. Like if I roll a die and it has 6 sides or 20 sides and I roll a natural 20, like I'm stoked because I just rolled a natural 20.
Yeah.
When I roll get a probability on a video game, in the back of my mind, I always think, is the game designer cheating? Like, because it's digital.
Right, because you can't actually see it. And,
and it's like, wow, they said like XCOM, they said, oh, there's a 92% chance for you to hit. And then I miss. And I'm like, did I actually miss or are you cheating behind the scenes? But that doesn't exist for physical. And I think that there's like some similar stuff in the physical space for escape rooms too. Like, there's a bunch of stuff you can do in computer games, but like when you're like actually tugging on a lock or manipulating a puzzle in real life or putting together anything, like there's something special about it being physical and real, and there's no tricks or bells and whistles. It's kind of a cool experience.
Yeah. Man, I feel like it would be like the immersion of it too could be pretty scary. Like I'm assuming there's like horror ones or like Halloween ones.
There are horror ones. I don't like the horror ones. If you are ever in LA, there's a bunch that just have different fun themes. Like there's like Fantasy Forest.
Mm-hmm.
There's like Mission
Fantasy
to Mars.
Forest. I like that sound of that.
Yeah. So I think like the idea of doing a puzzle room, we won't say escape room, but doing a puzzle room where the theme is not crazy psycho has locked you in your basement and wants to has set up this contraption to saw your limbs off if you don't escape in the next hour. Like, yes, there's plenty of rooms that have more appealing themes. Mm-hmm. Like, you are in a magical fairy forest, and in 1 hour the spell will wear off and you'll be returned to your human form. Quick, help the pixies, thwart off the giant. Like, there's fun rooms like that.
It's funny because like a lot of people joke that Rockland is wholesome horror because I don't know how far you got in the game, but like there are some parts that do feel unsettling. And even though I don't like horror movies and that's like not really my thing, I do like creating unsettling ambience. And that was actually something I really enjoyed doing for Rockland, like doing stuff like, you get closer to the clock and it gets louder and, suddenly, you walk down this way and there's some weird noise that's only panning on one side of the, the speaker, and like just like different color things you can do and things with the sounds. And I don't know, it just, for some reason, I really like that. So if I could watch beta testers play, if they would get suddenly really like, tense while playing those sections, like there's one thing where you walk past, and this isn't really a spoiler or anything. You walk past one area and you'll see somebody in a bed, and then you walk back again and they're gone. Just little things like that. They're like, wait, I could have sworn there was somebody there, like stuff like that. Yeah. It was That's so cool. Fun. I don't know why.
So I don't handle scary movies very well. Yeah, by the way, my family teases me all the time. They're like, how do you not like scary horror, but you work on Diablo? And for them, that makes no sense.
I know. I was saying me too. I would get a lot of flack for not being into scary movies.
Yeah. Well, so I'm not into scary movies. Mm-hmm. But there's a website, and I don't remember the name of the website right now, but they do a really good job where you type in the name of a movie and they tell you if that movie is scary or not. But what's great is they actually break scary down into 3 categories, mm-hmm. and they have examples and a scale, and they'll say, I think the first scale, I might get this wrong, but it's something like the first scale is just like gore, like scary because of the imagery, mm-hmm. and gore and horror imagery. The second scale is jump scares. Oh. And that's the worst one. I can't stand jump scares. Yeah. So like, what would be a good example? A Final Destination. Mm. I'm just like, no. Like I have very low tolerance for jump scares. I can't. I even have trouble with like Stranger Things sometimes, like mm-hmm. which is not even that scary. I mean, they're more like this gore, a little bit of a jump scare. And then the third category is unsettling, or like that kind of like psychological, like what you're describing. And that's like its own type of psychological horror. Mm-hmm. And so I actually kind of like that third category, mm-hmm. and I almost don't care about the first, like gore or not gore. Like I'm kind of fine either way. I get a little squeamish maybe, but whatever. But the jump scares, I can't stand. Mm-hmm. I just have so little tolerance for. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I feel very comfortable working on Diablo, right? It's like, mm-hmm. There's a bunch of gore and there's a bunch of unsettling stuff, but the jump scare level is pretty low.
Very low, yeah.
As a designer, I know what's coming, so I don't get jump scared. So it's fine. Oh, by the way, if you like the squeamish stuff, have you played Superliminal?
Is that the one that's like you stop time and then go backwards, and it's like this weird color?
No, Superliminal is you can like pick up objects and then change perspective and change their size and rotation by placing them in different ways, and they play around with perspective a lot.
I haven't played it, but I have seen like footage of it and stuff like that.
Okay. In terms of games that gave me an unsettling feeling with almost no jump scares, just like messed with my mind and like gave me chills and creeped me out without being gory or jump scary in any way. Superliminal, like top of the list. Would recommend if you like that kind of thing.
Is it because it like kind of made you feel like you were in another realm and the rules were different, or was it
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that like you know, they say sometimes scary things things can be scary just because your brain can't make sense of it, right? Like you know, like the classics are like you know, little girl singing in the middle of a cemetery. Like inherently no single part of that should be scary, but the cognitive dissonance is scary. Or a joint on a human that bends backwards. Like your brain is like, that's not supposed to happen. That's scary. And so I think Superliminal plays around with perspective so much that because of all the perspective playing they do, your brain just has a constant unsettling feeling like this is messed up, this is wrong, and it's just scary in that way.
That makes sense. Yeah. My friend wrote a book for like NaNoWriMo that was kind of in that realm. Like there's no gore, no jump scare. It's a book. But like they like just changed all the rules of the world, if that makes sense. Like,
what is this for?
My friend she made a book for National Novel Writing Month.
Okay.
And like you can, I think if you finish, you can like have a paperback copy. So she sent me one, and yeah, it messed me up. It was so weird. And it's hard to even explain why it was so unsettling. I think it's just because like, you know, like as humans, we exist in society. We like have certain things that we just kind of take for granted. Like this is, I don't know. It's so hard for me to explain it. Like, but these just basic understandings of things like what happens when someone dies, like, oh, you have a funeral, and like, you know, or what happens when you leave town, there's other towns you can go to. Like this is what the globe looks like, you know, what the world looks like. These are countries. She changed like all of the things like that, where it's like there was just this town, and she really made you believe you had no idea what existed out of this town, and like all these rules about life and death were just different. And it's really hard to explain. But by the time I finished the book, I felt like I had a really weird dream, and I was so confused. And I remember just like walking around for like an hour, just thinking like, what happened? And I never had a piece of media do that to me before. It was so weird.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah.
But let's see. I'm realizing it's 7 now, and I'm really enjoying this conversation. And so but like, I should probably let you go and close things up. But I wanted to end on a question related to if you have advice for people in chat, like if you have any advice for like wanting to get into the video game industry, or just like general stuff you would want to impart to people.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so final question. Do I have advice? Do you have people in chat who want to get into the game industry, or maybe in the game industry? Oh yeah. Anyway. Yeah. I would say don't focus too much on getting a particular position or a title. Let me think. Well, okay. So I'm gonna give some advice, and hopefully it's good advice. I hope I don't regret saying this later. Focus on getting really good at your craft, at some aspect of game development. I think sometimes people, and I guess maybe that's kind of a truism in some ways, but I think people, for example, I'm a game director, but that was never my goal. I wouldn't make game director, for example, your goal. I would just make be good at designing games your goal, or be good at developing games. It's like something very concrete about the craft of game development should be the goal. And this speaks a lot to sort of like motivation and enjoyment. I think that the better you get at something, the more you enjoy it. Because we enjoy things that we're good at, and when you enjoy something, it helps carry you through the hard times of making something, because making games is hard. And so there's kind of a virtuous cycle where you get better at doing something, so you enjoy it more. And because you enjoy it more, you get to continue to practice it. And I think that as you get, and people sometimes say, I actually really disagree with something we sometimes tell kids or like people early in their careers, where they find your passion, And I think there's a good sentiment behind it, but I kind of disagree with how it's interpreted or used sometimes. Like, find your passion isn't like, a lot of us could do multiple things. Like you could have, there are like 10 different alternate universe Lauras out there of things that you could have done. And you're not like trying to find your one passion. At least I don't believe that. There's a number of things you could have done. But I think when you pick something, you get better at it. You cultivate your passion. And as you cultivate it, you learn to do it better. And I think that as you get better and better at something, then opportunities open up. Opportunities that you didn't even know about. So like, that's why I say, like, don't have a particular job title or job position in mind. Just get good at really doing something. And then those opportunities, like, you get more and more opportunities as you get better at some aspect and craft of game development. I mean, there's positions today that didn't even exist 15 years ago.
That's
like
true.
Technical artist or rigger, or like UX wasn't even a term that people talked about 15 years ago. But people who just got really good at rigging, or visual effects artist, or audio engineer. I mean, audio engineer existed, but you know what I mean? Like, there's all these things that become very specialized, and we just look for people who are exceptionally good at those things. And it's just people who just followed and just got good by doing it.
I think that's really good advice. And Lunar, that already sounds like you in chat. Lunar is very, he's like super self-motivated and learns all kinds of things just for fun and gets really good at it. So,
cool.
Yeah. That's very good advice. I also wanted to say, for the people out there, you can see below, that is Wyatt's Twitter handle, Candlesun, and he has a whole story behind it, as he said earlier. So make sure to give him a follow on Twitter. He posts a lot of like interesting things, related to his work and game jams and stuff like that. So if you want to stay in the loop for when he does game jam streams, which are very fun to watch because you can see like all the behind the scenes stuff and everything, or you want updates on any of his projects and stuff like that, don't forget to give him a follow. Is there anything else you want to promote or talk about?
No, I mean, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the Twitter plug. And I mean, I don't stream a ton, although I've been meaning to stream more. I like streaming my game jams because, especially, I do a lot of game jams solo. So it's nice sometimes, just like I'm an ENTP, and so I have that extroverted side to me. And so sometimes I find that interacting with chat a little bit helps keep me energized and motivated as I'm doing a solo jam. I have been wanting to stream more other games. I kind of have a commitment to myself not to stream Blizzard games, just because it'd be weird. But there was a period in time I was just totally in love with Monster Train. I mentioned Monster Train on my top 5. I love Monster Train.
It's hard
but
to choose.
I was streaming that for a while. And so if people are interested in a bad streaming experience, sometimes I do that too. And I guess I should probably mention that Diablo Immortal comes out on June 2nd.
That's awesome. Awesome. I want to say one quick funny memory too about Wyatt. So like when the last time I think I visited Blizzard, like he was really accommodating and he was just like, Laura, I know you like tea a lot. So I'm going to take you to get tea. And the other cool thing was like, I think there was like a design conference, internal design conference going on or something like that. And so every day, like, and also Diablo 3 was gonna come out soon or something. So you were like, basically, you know, we're gonna go get a bunch of bread from 85 degrees and whatever tea you want, and then we're gonna come back and just play games. So I remember playing Diablo 3 before it came out, eating my taro bread, drinking my saltine. I was like, this is the best. It was really fun. So yeah, thank you for making that trip like really, really extra cool.
You're very welcome. Yeah. Thank you for having me, Laura. I originally only planned, I was like, hey, Laura, we're going to stream and it'll be like an hour, right? Or an hour or two. And I think it's been like 3-4 hours. So thank you for having me this whole time. I wasn't expecting to be on this long, but it was a ton of fun and the time just flew by.
That was so fun. Yeah. Thank you so much for like sharing your wisdom and stories and everything like that. It was really cool.